before we first 5 seconds in a curse word. Don't. Anyway, um, anyway. In that rate, we are live at the moment. Everything seems to be working as it should. Hopefully,
which is great.
gotta love fighting tech issues before we even get online this time. It's always fun and exciting. How you doing, Elliott?
I'm doing great, Chad. Thank you for having me on. It's always a hoot. And like I said, I hope that the tech issues we experienced beforehand do not carry over now that we're live.
Yeah, whenever Greg's not here, you know, we're just gonna toe the company line and just blame Greg on that one.
I'm fine.
But yes, so thank you again for joining us. We always appreciate you hopping on and being a part of the show. We actually have a pretty interesting. I know we say this every week, but this week is extra exciting. We have a relatively large announcement coming forward for the Shifting Lanes supporters / fans of the show. Basically, if you're watching this live, we consider you one of us.
Yes, and it's you guys are here for a momentous announcement.
Something that's long overdue. So I'm just gonna give the good folks. I see Sean is here.
Yeah,
Welcome.
give the people some time to tune in.
Just time to tune in,
and then we'll drop it on them.
But yeah. While we're waiting, what is new and exciting that you can actually divulge without spoiling a video in your automotive world?
It's funny. The newest and excitingest stuff I talked about last time, like I said, with my dad getting that lyric and stuff, which is not gonna. I mean, I'm gonna make a video on it sooner or later. But interestingly enough, and I know you don't hate electric cars, but I know you're not the biggest fan in the world of them. But what we're doing currently is in the process of actually installing a level 2 charger at the office. So it's getting wired in as we speak. But like my uncle is an electrician. And so my dad's an electrical engineer, so they are really having a ball doing it themselves. This is normally a thing where you hire a guy to come out, extra circuit breakers. It's obviously different voltage and amperage than your standard electricity, but it's fascinating to see come to fruition. And then we're going to have a fast charger inside at the office, which will be super cool. Because right now, the charger it comes with is fine, and actually, it's one of the things I'll show in the video. Yeah, it's the only one that I've seen that has it. The Lyric stock, travel charger, if you want to call it that, comes with two different types of plugs. You just unplug it from the brick. It has your standard like 120 volt thing, and then it has a 220 plug, like an appliance plug. So from the factory stock charger, you could, if you had a spare appliance socket in your house that was you could hook this thing up to, it will charge considerably faster than the standard 1 to 2 miles an hour that a normal house socket is rated for. So that's pretty neat. Yeah, that's the newest thing that's going on. I just got over COVID, which was annoying.
Yeah.
So it's good to be back and not in banishment anymore. Be out and about. It's been great. Just had dinner actually tonight with Tyler Hoover of
nice.
Hoovy's Garage. So that was fun. I can't divulge too much of what he's doing, but he's got some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, the life of take our subs, your subs, combine them, multiply them by several factors.
Yes.
Exponent and the nice thing, I don't even want to call it problems, but when literally tens, hundreds of thousands of people are awaiting your content. You don't want it spoiled, I suppose.
Right, and especially it's not my content to spoil, so I'm like, yeah, I'm nice. But yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on for everybody in the cast of Car Trek, I guess you could say.
That's cool because I think I just saw that Tavares was at Goodwood. If
yes,
social media was honest with me.
Yes, yeah. So he was, and he said that was just a must attend event. I mean, and I would totally if I see it in my wheelhouse at some point. I would love to go to a Goodwood Festival of Speed. I love the clips coming out. And whoever runs that page, by the way, is brilliant because they just sprinkle them all year long. And like it'll be halfway through the year, and I'm like, "Ooh, a Goodwood clip," and it's like from this year, and I've never even seen it before. Uh, so yeah, it's fantastic. I do love the event, or at least the idea of it. Can't say because I haven't been. What's new with you? You've got Mustang stuff happening.
Yes, we're in a bit of a holding pattern. Um,
Mm.
just like every time I get up to go to film, it's one of those things where it's like I end up finding out that I have X amount of time, and it's either go work out or go drive to Blue Sky. And seeing as how I do not want to be a fat ass for my friend's wedding,
Ah,
um,
that's a good motivator right there.
yes, uh, I, the gym or working out, or I personally hate being on like a treadmill or like walking around my development because like I do a shit ton of steps every day, but like it gets
Yeah.
boring and like my motivation wanes. So there's this nice trail on the street I actually grew up on. Um, thank you, Elliott, for letting me know that you're here.
Hey, it's interaction, man.
Yes, yes. The comments
Yeah,
are
for
good
anybody's
things.
listening audio only, I chimed in on chat that I was here.
Yes, after I asked for a roll call, but so it's a nice little trail. It's outside. It's away from. It's significantly less peoply than the gym. So, but
That's nice.
I am hoping at some point, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, if the gods will allow it, getting up to Blue Sky. We do have a plan, but the timing of events and things, I need to sit down and have a chat, see what's happening when, because obviously that's going to dictate what content is created and the time I basically scheduling so that I don't have this. I have an hour and a half. What do I spend it on?
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't like even when I have to film stuff like that. I find I get so stressed when there is like an end date. Like when it's like I need to be done by this time because nothing ever exactly goes to plan. And boy, can it be a stressful hustle.
Oh.
And I don't think makes for the best possible content. So I do,
Right.
I do totally get that.
Yeah, I like to try to keep well, that was one of the things back, and I've mentioned it before, back when I was doing the C30 content. While it was fun to work on the car at first, and it was cool to see the end result and be able to sit here and tell people, yeah, I did that. The subsequent drain of like having to do a project, like an intake, which hardest intake I've ever installed on any car, by the way, was the
Well,
C30. Literally the
it's
stop.
doing that is already a pain in the ass enough, and then to need to film it adds such a level
Right
to it,
I'm,
and I get that.
I don't know what your ratio is, but like if a job is like an hour long, it's at minimum 1.5 to 2 hours long while filming it.
Yeah, that's pretty much accurate. I mean, like I said, there's certain jobs that some people were like, even on my Volvo, they're like, "How are you not done with that yet?" I was like, "Because I have to stop and show
Yes.
what I'm doing. I'm not just doing the job." Um, yeah, so trust me, on a spiritual level, I get that, and how much more exhausting it is. It's not. And then, like I said, you factor in something that is an actual difficult job. I mean, honestly, I challenge anybody who's not done it before: do something that you could do in your sleep, like change the oil, but then film it.
Yes.
It's not. It's just like, and that's a straightforward thing. Now, imagine something you've never done before, and that's also difficult, and then
Yeah.
trying to film it, and you're like,
And as a lot of our chat and viewers know, they have a lot of older cars and things like that. When a car has some miles on it, like the Volvo did, it was an '08, so it had some miles on it. It had lived a Michigan life, so things weren't pristine, so to speak. And so, like, the intake manifolds were a pain in the rear end just because I had to clean the threads like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like you got some seized bolts. You got everything going on because of time and heat and mileage and
yeah, I mean, nothing was really
elements.
seized or really that hard to remove, thank God. It was getting everything back in, and because of the nature of the bolts, we're not talking about these big bolts with a good, manageable thread pitch. We're talking about relatively smallish bolts. And it was just like, okay, this is only going halfway. So now I'm literally pulling stuff off, pulling the lower intake manifold off, chasing threads, all this other stuff that like it was. But I don't like filming long form on a deadline per se. Now, as Greg and I get back into it, the gods willing, there obviously will be deadlines. But one of the things I liked about the initial Mustang build was I went there and I filmed everything. And by the first video came out on my last visit, quote unquote, to Blue Sky.
Yeah.
So I had 8 or 9 or whatever, how many other videos lined up, ready to go.
Rock. Yeah.
And I like
That's
that
so
as
nice.
opposed to, here's a C30 video. 2 weeks later, there's another one.
Yeah.
Then,
and that's my dream would be to do that. I mean, that's how Doug DeMuro operates. Is everything he's like a month ahead on videos. Like if something happened, it's like I can't imagine that kind of cushion. I think at one time in my life have I ever been like, I might have a video ready to go for next week before I have to film the next one. That's amazing. Like
Yeah.
it's like I can't imagine having this cushion of a month and just being like, I could totally not do anything for a long time and everything's still fine. Now, given, like I said, full-time thing for him, but yeah, I do get the being on a deadline creatively is difficult, regardless of what it is. I think it kind of takes away some of it, honestly.
yeah, and that's why, so I've been racking my head on, just exactly where the long form I want to go. And I won't spend too much time with it. I think we got everyone who we're going to get
Yeah.
here. But that's why I kind of like the style of reels that I've been doing and correlating that from a minute and a half or 90-ish seconds and spending more time and making it into a 10 or 15 minute long video. Because there's some reels that I've done that actually I really want to dive into more detail, longer form, have more moments for levity. Not that I'm forcing comedy or jokes or that I think I'm the funniest guy in the world or whatever, but basically not having to sit here and say, okay, I have to make this 90 seconds and then cut it down to 60 seconds because thanks YouTube.
Yeah.
And just have that. Like the number one that I really want to do is Red Byron, the first ever NASCAR champion who served in World War II aboard I think it was a B-24 Liberator, whatever they called, unfortunately, the flying coffins.
Yeah, hard to whittle that kind of guy down to a short or a reel.
And then to serve that, most people, when they think of World War II, they think of the island hopping in the Pacific, or they think, France, or European countryside, or there's the flat-out bombing of cities in Europe. But he actually served in the Aleutian Islands, which is where Japan actually held territory, albeit briefly, on a United States actual state. Like, they held Dutch Harbor of Deadliest Catch fame. So there's the whole, and you know what they say, once you turn 40, you either get really into grilling or you get really into World War II history. Well, guess which route I went. So, all of those are really, really cool. So, but let me just make sure I have everything queued up correctly here. But all right, everyone in chat, give me a thumbs up or your favorite emoji to let me know you're paying attention, because it is officially announcement time, and I think we're on about a 10-second delay with chat, so I'll give you a second. But this is something I will sit here and say. Actually, while we're doing this, let me just run down chat real quick. Sean, is the Mustang making 27 million horsepower yet? Not yet. I wonder what his opinion. Michael asks the Seek 4 Corvette. I mean, I got a feeling Elliott is kind of a fan, if not a big fan.
Yeah, it might even come up later. It almost always seems to.
And then the comments on it. Marcus or Anthony's too broke to pay attention. Steve was the one who followed instruction. We got Sean, Rolf. Okay, guys. So this is something you guys have been on my case, mine and Greg's case specifically, for a minute now. And especially Steve, he's been the most vocal of you guys. But I am here, and I would like. We actually haven't even addressed the issue. Greg is not going to be joining us tonight. I don't know if I mentioned that. Totally forgot that. I got lost in Elliott's eyes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, yeah. I should say. I mean, I don't deserve to be here for this announcement, but I'm all you get. So I mean, here I am.
Yes. So, Anthony, not so much. You're going to be excited about this for not automotive reasons, but with in a good way, Steve. But without further ado, I am proud to announce that in September we'll be doing our first meetup, and we're calling it Shift Show. It is an informal gathering, right? I did not rent the track. I did not rent a fairground. This is informal, but Island does provide us the opportunity to have a lot of space so everyone can park their car, whether you plan on actually running it down the quarter mile or not. It'd be cool to see you guys do, but I understand some of you are driving from a distance and you don't want to risk something breaking at the track. That's fine. This is more about hanging out, having a good time, sharing just a car experience with everyone, finally getting everybody in the same place that isn't necessarily Carlisle, and everything like that. It is kind of a 2-dayer, so if you can't make one day, you can, by all means, if you can't make Friday the 6th, by all means come down the 7th, where Anthony will take particular interest. The 7th, we're going to do a light cruise. I wanted to do something that had enough of a time to kind of drive, enjoy it a little bit. But unfortunately, the best driving roads around me are very short. So it'd be going up and down, didn't really. And I wanted to have a location, something my local area is somewhat famous for. Is we're going to do a little cruise. We're all going to meet relatively central, whether it be there is one hotel in the area, whether it be meeting there, details to come on that. But we're going to take a nice drive through the countryside of Northwest New Jersey, and we're going to end at Hot Dog Johnny's, which speaking of World War II, was started out as a little hot dog stand by a World War II vet and grew into, if you're from New Jersey, you know it, kind of a thing. It's become one of those things. It's it's someplace with space. Their hot dogs are pretty good. Their birch beer is really good.
I hope they have good hot dogs with a name like that.
They do, just so anyone knows, they do fry all of their hot dogs in peanut oil. So this is your warning if you have that particular form of allergy, bring a sandwich. And to answer,
this is exciting.
But again, we are long overdue for a meetup. I wanted to pick something. So my schedule is the rest of July booked. August, most of the weekends are booked. So September was kind of the first availability that Greg and I both had. And it also provides enough notice to where you guys can plan any sort of travel. And again, Steve, to your point or what have you, one of the 2 days, I will be, as we go along here. I did reach out to my local hotel, and unfortunately, there's just not going to be enough of you for me to get any sort of group booking or group discount or anything of that nature. I will be posting in Shift Squad the details about that. If you're not in Shift Squad but you're here and want to attend, friend me on Facebook, Instagram, what have you, and DM me, and I'll gladly send you details and things of that nature. But again, this is a fun event. I want you guys to show up, hang out. Don't feel like you have to do anything other than that. So Andrew is a fellow Long Valleyan, even if he fled the state for New England of all places. And then Andrew, I'll absolutely DM you either tomorrow or Friday, and we'll kind of figure something out. Because I do kind of want. So with the cruise, I want to do a route that's mildly fun, but also has enough open space to where I can actually get footage of everyone. I would love to get running footage of at least one shot of everyone's car. Hopefully, because I do have I do have a few friends who also are going to be attending this. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know my buddy Lou. He was big on the Volvo series, or the C30 series. He's going to hopefully be attending. Andrew, save the dates. Once I get more actual details, again, to those of you who are not a part of Shift Squad, but again, if you're watching this right now, live, you are invited. Elliott is invited. I don't know if he's willing to make
I'm invited.
A plane trip to New Jersey, but I didn't want to go through all of this and be like, oh, by the way, Elliott, yeah, you can't come. No, I'm totally kidding.
No. Well, if it's an open invite, I would hope that it still extends to me. But
yes,
no, I'm going to see on this. It's the week and right after we'll probably be getting back from Indiana, but it doesn't mean that it's out of the question because this would be pretty cool to go to. I'll have to look at flights and all that, the logistics of it. But yeah. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. So I think it'd be neat. I'd just probably have to ride with one of you guys because I'm not driving to New Jersey. But that being said, I'm really excited about this. I've been to things like this, and it's so fun. And like I said, you guys have fans from all over, and like I said, it's just always fun to get car enthusiasts together, and they fall all into the umbrella of shifting lanes, enthusiasm, and we all have a bunch more in common, and it's amazing when you get those people together. You're like, well, I'm not going to know anybody. It doesn't matter. Like you will have an instant built-in large friend
right
group.
That's exactly it. We have, like you said, we have the built-in car enthusiasm, and then we have the built-in of either being shifting lanes, or you come here and you enjoy our content. I feel like our community is small enough to where I've talked to most of you either in person or whether it be via DM, and some of you we talk fairly regularly, which is something I never thought I wouldn't be thinking I would be regularly talking to viewers. Not that I thought I would be above that, more of I have viewers who actually want to talk to me outside of the content that I create. Right. And yeah, I mean, if you can, great. If you can't, look, I get it. Greg might take it personally because he's a little soft like that. He does have an accent over.
He's gonna know. He's gonna know who he expects to be there, and he's gonna take note of who's not there. And yeah. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think this is just gonna be fantastic. And like I said, having the option of doing one or both is also cool because sometimes with events like this, it's either just a meetup or just a cruise. And I this is a great idea to do both, and separately also.
Yeah, I wanted
because also nobody's schedules are difficult, so it's like
right. I figured if I made something
somebody could make one of both of those work.
2 days, if you can do both, great. If you can do one or the other, also really great. It's that's part of what I want to do. I have, like I said, early September, I have time. I mean, October gets crazy again with my friend's wedding and everything we're doing for that. Finally did get my certification from the Universal Life Church a week or so ago.
Same. Did you get all the stuff in the mail? I loved the card that says like clergy.
Yes.
Or whatever. I love that so much.
There's a small part of me, and this is the wise ass in me, that kind of wants to be like, if I just hang this from my mirror, can I park in clergy spots? Or if I just wear it?
I mean, because
what access I get in places?
In the eyes of the law, I mean.
Yes, legally. So I am now, since I've got the paperwork, I am officially Reverend Chad.
Hey.
Don't hit me.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Yeah. But, yeah, so, guys, again, if you are Andrew, again, we will talk post-show because those roads, once you get into Pennsylvania or around Pennsylvania, my knowledge of where to go is just just disappears. So we can absolutely talk about that. Um, Andrew also offers to pick you up at the airport on his
I
way
know. I
down.
saw that. I was about to comment. I was like, an offer to cruise in the CRV with Steve, and then an airport ride from Andrew. I mean, things are coming together.
You know, yeah, you get a car from Steve. You get to share the camper with
Yeah.
Anthony. Andrew will
Yeah.
drive
I
you.
was like, I just need to get somebody to just flat out
VIP.
sponsor a flight down there.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't. I think some of these guys, without some pushing, might even go to Kansas. I mean, that might be a bridge too far. But
Oh, guys, I'm not gonna host a. Hey, why don't you all come down here? Because our cruising roads are mighty thin.
yes,
they're pretty straight.
Yeah.
Like we have to drive. Oh, I've told you about this. We have to drive like 5 hours to, basically Lake of the Ozarks or what is it? Yeah, it's wherever it is. I can't remember the name. It doesn't matter. It's in Arkansas, and Eureka Springs, Arkansas. That's like our nearest like cool driving road. It's pretty far away.
yeah.
And it's not even in Kansas, so
yeah, and
can't even claim it.
right. And then lastly, before we kind of move on, again, just to repeat a couple of things. Come for one, come for both. There is no ticket. There is no entry. There is no, hey, what's going on, Josh? Is Lando a duck? Quality F1 humor. Josh, if you're here, I've already talked to John and those guys, but you are also invited to what you see on screen. Feel free to DM me for details. But before we move on, number one, Rolf, I am hoping this winter I have buddies in that area as well to get down to Bradenton. I do want to get down there. I'm hoping that I can make that work this winter. Number two, as far as Shift Show is concerned, again, if you are watching this live, you are invited. If you are part of Shift Squad, I will be posting the info there. However, if you are not a part of Shift Squad, don't feel like you have to go and pay me a monthly subscription to be invited to this if you cannot manage it. Find me on one of the social media platforms. DM me. If you do not, I'll make it real easy. If you're in Facebook chat right now, and you're not friends with me on, say, on Facebook, there I am. I'm right in Facebook chat. Send me a friend request. DM me. Ask for details. As they come, I will send them out to you. I will even create a larger group chat just for logistics of the event, so we have a place to communicate. Number two, friends and spouses, or whatever. If they're friends of yours, good friends of yours, if you trust them, I trust them. Number two, your spouses, they are also invited if they want to come up and make the trip. They don't have to come, but I want this to be inclusive. I don't want anyone to feel excluded. I don't want to feel like, it's like, hey, hon, let's go take a quick 3-day weekend up in New Jersey. There's a great camping spot at blah, 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 blah.
And then it turns out to be a car event.
And then,
like,
well, it is a car event, but I know I've seen Doug, who's unfortunately not with us tonight, but I've seen Doug, Anthony. I've seen you bring your wife to Carlisle and stuff like that. Again, if all are welcome, I don't want this to become I don't want something like quote unquote exclusivity to prevent someone from be the reason someone can't attend. So
very cool.
And then again, lastly, where did I touched on details? So hold on, I'm just checking my notes. And then lastly, as far as lodging, again, this will be part of the greater, again, friend me on Facebook so I can get you in the group chat or what have you. There is one hotel, Anthony, I wasn't even thinking of camping, but I'm fairly confident I know there's campsites around. I have not looked into them literally since I turned like 13 and left the Boy Scouts. So I'm not a camper. Anyone who's been to went to Carlisle the year I was there, camping was not on my to-do list. So, at any rate, if you guys have questions, again, the post is live in Shift Squad. Post them there or DM them to me, and I will gladly answer them after the show, tomorrow, etc. And we can go from there. Um,
And
also,
if you're not in Shift Squad, you just slip Chad or Greg a cool 10 spot when you see them in person. They'll they'll probably accept that, and I think that that's that's probably a fact. Just gonna leave it at that.
yeah, yeah. Buy us a hot dog.
Hey, there you go.
So again, we'll be talking about it again. We'll be as more details emerge when Greg comes back next week. Hopefully, we will be discussing it again and everything. But again, just to put a bow on it, it's happening. I'm hoping everyone can make at least one of the days, if not both. We're gonna introduce some of you who are not from the tri-state area to what an actual good bagel is and what good pizza actually tastes like. While you're up here, those are the two homework assignments. You get a slice and have a bagel, because when you go back to wherever it is, Virginia, West Virginia, Kansas, or what have you, and what they call those things can't compare. Even take a few home with you. You'll be the most popular person in your town, I guarantee it. But with all of that being said, we are now going to transition by kind of no particular. When Elliott's on, my brain just goes to Elliott-based themes. It's not that we sit. Elliott's like, "Hey, I'm on the show. Let's make it about me and my interests."
Let's make it about me. No, I do appreciate it though. And I do. I thought you were gonna say when Elliott's on, we just kind of end up talking about whatever, which is again, probably going to happen if as if it already hasn't. But yeah, go ahead, because I don't really know how to present this one other than how you presented it to me. So
well, that's incredibly
yeah, which I guess kind of makes sense, and I never really thought about it until you said it, because you were like, well, we kind of want to talk about your car like history, and I was kind of like, I'm a car YouTube channel, doesn't everybody? I was like, not really, because my car YouTube history kind of starts way after my car history does, as did anybody who's around our age in the automotive YouTube thing. I mean, there were many vehicles before we started filming them.
Yes. And so exactly. So I figured this.
And we've got obviously stories and relatable stuff all around them. The only other thing I wanted to cover before we cover that is, and we can talk about this next time, but like I said, I will be out in Indiana at the end of August, for Worldwide Auctioneers stuff. And I heard of a couple of cool stuff that they're going to have in the auction, if you wanted to hear a little bit about that.
You hit me.
One of them, and it was my guy, he said something, he was sending me these in bullet points, and I knew there's some older car stuff that I like we have a 1932 Auburn boat tail speedster, but this is a very early car, and it's a 12-cylinder car. Now, most of the ones that are famous are the supercharged 8-cylinders, and they have the cool pipes coming out of the side. This is like before that, so this is a very special car. This was a random one. They, for some reason, have the Grateful Dead's equipment truck that they love. They call the Dread, and I mean, it's this. I don't even want to call it patinaed. It's like a bunch of different colors. As you could imagine, a Grateful Dead truck would be a hippie truck, but it's also kind of like a Jeepers Creepers looking thing at the same time. It's very interesting, and apparently it's been in a bunch of publications. They're very excited for it. I'm sure there's somebody out there who just loves the Grateful Dead and wants an old pickup, and they will love that. But the one that was fascinating to me was he was going on yada yada yada, and he was like, Wolf of Wall Street Lamborghini, and I was like, I thought that was like crashed and then sold to somebody in like Japan for like however much it was. But he clarified it's not the one that didn't have a whole bunch of screen time, but it's not the Countach. It's the yellow Diablo from the scene where he's everything at Benihana goes down. So I was like, that's what an interesting random car for us to have. So I'm pretty excited about that one. And then also they warned me that they were like, man, we have a lot more newer Euro exotic things than normal. And I was like, Great. I right in my wheelhouse. Like I know those cars very well. So it's going to be a cool auction. I don't know how many of you guys are in that area. I think I'm going to be doing a giveaway of some sort on my channel for tickets to the event, because this one's also unlike the other auctions throughout the year. This one coincides with like a what they call like the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival in that town. So there's events going on all over the city, and they have like a car show and swap meet outside of this massive facility. It really is just like this whole place turns into car town. It's amazing. And if you're anywhere in that Indiana, Chicago, or not Chicago, I guess Chicago, Detroit-ish area, it's worth the drive. It's a fantastic event. I'll have more info on that coming up on my channels. But like I said, I just got pretty excited about some of the bullet point cars that are being listed. I think they already have over 300 lots, which is quite a few for this kind of auction. So that's gonna be pretty awesome.
No, that's absolutely. And then I mean, you're much. Let me. Sorry, my brain went ding, 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 ding. No, and I mean, number one, that Grateful Dead car, it's probably going to end up at some like either like like roadside attraction type of place, museum.
Right, and it should.
Right, of all the cars that you should
it,
just like
yeah.
park and just look at, it's probably that.
Yeah, it's definitely that. I mean, it is an old truck. It just has history, And like I said, they already had it there the last time I was there. I've seen it. It is interesting. It definitely is a what the heck is that type of vehicle. But there's something out there for everybody, and I hope it does go to, like I said, a Hard Rock Cafe or something. Like it needs to be in a place like that.
Well, I just read actually. Oh, what the hell is it? One of the they're demolishing a pretty well-known casino hotel in Vegas to make room for the new Hard Rock Guitar Hotel.
Oh, sweet.
I mean,
there you go.
Kind of screams Vegas.
Yeah.
The pre-war stuff. I mean, look, it's very interesting. It's
very specific, and it's not very YouTube-y. Like yeah.
I mean, it could be. It's just one of those things where, like, let me put it this way: I didn't think Volvo was very YouTube-y, and boy, howdy, were we wrong.
Yeah, telling me.
So you have that, but I mean, look, the pre-war stuff is always kind of cool to look at because it's one of the where like. I don't know how the best way to put it, but it's almost like watching a kid or a baby animal learn to kind of walk for the first time, and they're like,
it is.
And
you're
as
like,
the
yeah,
engineers, and it's just like,
yeah, they literally didn't know the better way. Like, no one. We've talked about this a little before. Like, there's so many things that we know now that are so much easier that they didn't. Either they definitely didn't know, and then it's easy to be like, well, this was the best of what they could do at the time. I mean, and it's like. So archaic and like sometimes more complicated than it needs to be. And I mean, just the simple fact that nobody discovered that you should put wide tires on things until like the 60s is amazing. We went through all of these times, like the greatest performance cars in history, and you're like, how wide are the tires? They're like 2 inches maybe. They're like, and these are the fastest cars in the world, and you guys are just sliding around in these things. You're like, yeah, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
it was just it's amazing how far we've come in a relatively short amount of time. But there's a lot of appreciation, and they're kind of like artwork. I mean, there's stuff, even if you don't know what they are, in events like Worldwide Auctioneers, there's a good chance if it's in the building and you're looking at it, it's special. I mean,
yes.
there's a bunch of Model A's and stuff out there that are neat, and there's a lot of cars, if you don't know pre-war cars, and I know that's most people, a Model A could very easily be mistaken for a Duesenberg to a normal person, and they'd be like, those are the same, and could not be, like they're not. They just, all cars generally had big fenders and wire wheels.
Well, it's again, it's a byproduct of everybody's trying to answer the same question. Right.
I mean, seriously, you could look at Fords and Chevys, stuff like that. They're from the same era, just back when that was the only design unit. You have to basically go right up to it to tell which one is which. It was just like all cars had the same, totally vertical radiator, big fenders, wire wheels, and 2 big headlights. Like, they all did that. I mean, it was really hard to differentiate them. And then, like I said, the only ones that are very, very spectacular are the ones that are worth, $1 million, like a 32 Auburn Boat Tail Speedster. There was no mistaking that. You'd be like, whoa, everything looks the same except for that. And those cars have been valuable forever. Uh, but yeah, they're still just neat to be around and neat to see.
Yeah, and I mean, and not for nothing. Again, that part of the cars were kind of becoming affordable and mass producible,
Right.
and so sure you could put big bodies. I mean, we're also talking about an era of coach building too, right? But like
Right.
you could have put like an enclosed body that looks more like quote unquote what we picture a car of, you know, the 20th century kind of a thing, right? Like post war or what have you, or 60s. Or at any rate, minutia of me trying to figure out how to exactly to label that crap aside, it's like okay, well we just need to cover the wheel. Bang! We've been kind of doing this with bicycles for a few decades now, you
Right.
know, that sort of a thing. And then to Anthony's point, it's like, so nothing's changed. Well, now we have the ubiquitous, all the crossovers kind of look identical.
Well, yeah, but the difference back then, it was just very like, well, the most efficient way to get air into the radiator is to stick it as far forward as you can and straight up. Things. The reason back, but then they went into the 50s and the 60s where it was style first, and everybody really was making crazy looking different cars. Now everything looks the same because of our freaking safety standards. Kind of almost ensure that you have to start out with a pillbox of a car and then do your best to make it look attractive. We're lucky anything looks sort of good with the amount of restrictions and how high door sills need to be and all these different things that have to happen. I mean, we're people, car designers are very uh handicapped in this at this point. I mean, they've definitely got, one arm tied behind their back and being like, here's maybe what you can do. Like I said, it's amazing that we're even able to have Corvettes that look the way they do anymore. I'm surprised it doesn't have to, have to be mandatorily, 5 inches taller than it is. It's wild what the design restrictions will do to car design, or safety restrictions will do to car design. It's kind of atrocious.
Yeah.
That being said, and most people don't care. I mean,
Well, like we've always said, and I think this is kind of a, it's the segue I'm going to use. I don't know if it's a good one,
yes,
but most people look at a car in pretty much the same way they look at a refrigerator.
yeah,
It's an appliance. It's an expensive one, but point A, point B, and what can it hold? How many can it hold? And yada yada yada. So again,
yep,
if the you have one question, everybody you have 10 different people trying to answer that over the course of time, they'll all sort of come down the same path.
yep, very true.
So, but uh, and that's an interesting thing because Elliott's first car was actually a Bowtail Speedster. No, I'm kidding.
No, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, my dad loved me very much. My first car is nothing to sneeze at. As we're gonna go, I hopefully you got these in chronological order ish now,
I
sort of.
was rushing around, man.
It
I
doesn't
have
matter.
them in.
I at least
The order I
you at
put
least
them,
have them.
the order I put them in was I kind of sort of grouped a certain category together. To anyone who's
That's
a
fine.
fan or knows Elliott at all, that should the type of car should not come as any sort of surprise.
No,
But the order I ended up going with was just in 45 seconds of the first couple videos, first couple pictures are purely for comedic effect, just like this one.
great. Ah, yes. Pre-Photoshop, that
Yes.
is actually me and my dad.
Yes. No, I wanted Greg to join us in some fashion on tonight's show, but no, this is the pre-Photoshop, the wholesome image of, yep, Elliot, you have no choice. C4s are,
C4s
and this is,
just getting incepted into me.
and probably also a how you got into open top motoring as well.
Probably. I was gonna say, I was like, also take a look at that fine at the time, crispy Pontiac Sunbird. Um, my dad, loved that thing, and I'm also a Pontiac man. Not that it matters because the brand's dead, but a lot makes sense in this photo that made way more sense now as an adult. I'm like, all right, yeah, I get it. I wish we still had those. We had two of those C4 Power Wheels thing. Like my sister had one and I had one. I wish we still had one because I'm sure they're. I mean, obviously the batteries be no good, but I wonder. I'm kind of curious what those a C4 Power Wheels would be worth now. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was, I guess you could say, my first car. Was
Yes.
my
I mean, I also I think I had a Power Wheel, but it was Bigfoot, and then
Oh, that's cool.
and my dad being my dad was a hot rodder through and through, you know, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
But we ended up, so he ended up changing the batteries out, putting actual, I think it was actual like golf cart wheels on it.
Oh,
So it actually had tires. So like instead of
so it
the
wasn't
hard,
that
it
plastic
wasn't like when you hit
BS. Yeah.
like a little bump. It wasn't. It actually kind of,
Yeah.
and then I think, and then when I got a little older, it was the motor out of our old washing machine, and then he was like, "Just hold on 1 second," and like he kind of sort of like wedged himself in and hit it, and the thing just went like this, and he's like, "Okay," so but like. I think he was actually working on trying to make it actually 4-wheel drive. I'm like, Dad, I'm 12. I got baseball
Oh,
practice. Like, like,
dang. Well, that would have been sweet though.
but that's kind of how my dad was. But I don't even remember how I.
I love this. Everybody's chiming in with their first cars now too. It's just
Yes.
fascinating to
Uh,
learn.
where is it? There we go.
Ralph, an 80 Camaro probably would have been pretty sweet in 92 though. I I don't know. I mean, because if you think about it, like a 12-year-old Camaro, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean that's the
Um,
equivalent of getting a 2012 Camaro now.
yeah,
You
that's what I'm
know,
saying. It would be like, okay, that's really cool. Yeah, but I get it. Chevy S10 for the other Elliott. Not a bad choice. You can't go wrong with those. You
it
know,
was not.
probably got you to from A to B.
Let's see here. Steve's first actual was a '96 Trans Am painted purple. I mean, that's a hell of
Sweet.
a first car. But did it have the 350 in it? And
Yeah, 96. It should be the LT1.
but all right. So you guys kind of, if you were paying attention, I was playing around with the ordering here. But apparently, the next car on the list is you owned a Lexus at some point.
I did, if you can believe it or not. That's what I said. Like this oddball. This was during my time of. I want to say this was might have been like 2013 or something like that. Um,
I owned a
Now
Lexus
I
at that
still
time too.
throughout all of this, I never got rid of my C4, the one that I kept for forever. I still had that, so it's not like I was like whatever. I just like these were like the cars that I was driving all the time. This is my daily. Um, and actually, so it was an IS 250 all-wheel drive. So it's the smaller V6, but all-wheel drive. Uh, Not fast, but I'll tell you what. I mean, I've of the daily drivers that I've had, this might have been the best, just because of what it was. It was smooth, reliable. It had all-wheel drive. All the things I want. Climate control. It was just a good, straightforward car. It wasn't flashy by any means, but it also wasn't a heap of junk. So you could, it was kind of a mixture of everything. It was literally like almost kind of ended up being the perfect daily driver. And like I said, having still something cool on the side was helpful. Obviously, it was no ISF or whatever, but again, this is the daily driver. And at the time, like I said, still lived in an apartment, so it's you know it was outside a lot and whatever else. As surprising and kind of nondescript as that car is, it really was just it did such a good job of being what it was that I never had a bad thing to say about it, even at the time. Like I said, people always say, "Oh, they're horrendously slow." I was like, I know it is. I didn't get it because it was fast. It was just a good car, and for the few times that it snows a year here, no problemo, all-wheel drive. Uh, and like I said, it fairly low mileage, and this is what I ended up trading in towards the Hellcat, which is a hilarious move. But
Oh, I thought you were
it
just
really
saying.
was.
And this is what I ended up 2J swapping.
No, that'd be freaking sweet. No, I really did enjoy that car. It was great. It didn't have the nav, unfortunately, but it didn't matter because it would have been old anyway. Uh, it just was a good car. Like I said, I don't know what else to say about it. Maybe a little girly, possibly, but
It's just, let's put it this way. We all have perfect example. My first car was a Focus ZX3. Nothing
Hey,
really overly exciting about it. They did look kind of funky at first, which gave them some sort of curb appeal, so to speak. But it was still, it was a Focus. It was front wheel drive. It made all of 140 horsepower. It was a manual. Both of them were actually my first two cars. The first one meant an untimely end with an embankment and a guardrail.
ah,
Uh,
ooh.
yeah. This actually, I did make a YouTube video out of that actually. But at any rate, no, sometimes you just need a car. We can't just be. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, don't get me wrong. The second one, I did my thing with it, which is, I added, think about almost 100 horsepower to it. Via
Dude, it's like doubling its horsepower.
yeah. And that was one of the first cars that I spent way too much money on, because like instead of, oh, you need to do this, I may have had from England because at the time Ford was making the Focus RS, which was front wheel drive, turbocharged, etc.
Right.
Made I think 220-ish horsepower, but it had a trick out limited slip diff that we obviously weren't privy to here. So, yeah, had that shipped over. Mine was supercharged. At this point in my life, I wasn't really paying attention to things that I probably should have. The fact that car survived, but it was like, yeah, let's put the smaller pulley on it, 93 octane,
Oh.
send it, like whatever. I ended up selling that car to actually a British immigrant who was dating a friend of mine at the time. And he's like, yeah, he was all about like, oh, well, we got the actual hot one over in England. Da 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 da. Where's my tea?
Haha.
Uh,
And then you're like, here, this one won't be a problem for you at all later down the road.
not at all. Then he wrapped it around a telephone pole because he didn't quite understand. Lift off oversteer on a front wheel drive car.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but no, I get it. I mean, the car after that was an IS 300. I mean, sure, they look amazing, but they had
They are good
they had a base
looking.
They had a base 2J GE
Yeah.
with a W55 manual transmission, which, yay, manual, but those things were glass if you approached anything above 350 horsepower. So,
Right.
but yeah, no, we all have to deal. It'd be cool to say like my position in life now where it's like, what's your daily? Well, it was cooler when I used to be able to answer that question with, oh, it's that 705 wheel horsepower Mustang. Wait, you daily that? Yes, I'm a bit of a lunatic.
Right.
But most people aren't. I think the next one up on the list is an Integra of some sort, which
my 1997 Acura Integra. I loved it. So it's funny that this came about the way that this is. I think this car came about as my first ever like daily, if that makes sense. I was still pretty young.
Okay.
And I bought this with, this was still like when I lived at home with my parents, but I was working, and all of my money that I was taking home was, oh, now I just have this much money. Like, I didn't have the adult thing where I'm like, I get a paycheck and I'm like, okay, you immediately start dividing it in your head. I was just like, nothing meant it. It was just like, I was working and I would receive money. And then, it didn't go out anywhere. And I don't know why. This was after I had my Corvette redone or painted or whatever, something like that. It got to the point where for the first time in my life, I was worried about it, and like, I don't really want this out here. I don't want this. And then I was kind of like, man, it'd be really cool if I had a car that I still liked, that I could drive when I'm not worried about it and not freak out, about leaving it in this place or that place, which is the kind of point of anybody who has a daily in here. That's what they're for. It's just the one that you're not that worried about. And this was my first version of that I paid for with my money that I got from my high school job. And like I said, it was a pretty high mileage, definitely not anymore, but at the time, 97 Acura Integra, and it was manual. And the person before me had done some stuff to it. I mean, it was hilarious. Like, it wasn't riced out, but it had all the, it made all the right annoying Civic noises that you'd be used to. It definitely had the big like kind of exhaust, and it had a huge it had a kicker L7 sub that took up all of the hatch.
Oh, we all had to have
Yeah.
crazy. That was the thing. Like, back in the day, it was okay. The stereo had like, well, for me at least, the girls in my area was like, oh, the stereo. They were more excited, so I would get it. And I've mentioned it before. My Focuses both had those little lights in them that were bass sensitive.
Yeah.
That would go with the bass. So here's the thing.
And Steve, to answer your question, yes, manual. Sorry.
These Integras, these second gen Integras, are something I've always liked. I always thought, so like, you know how my brain works. It's like, oh, what are the things? Well, you could probably do a pretty cheap K swap in them. That you get yourself 260 front wheel drive naturally aspirated horsepower and have a really good car. Or if you decided to go a little crazy, turbocharge it 450, crazier. And this is one of the builds I'm sad that never got finished because of the whole Hoonigan situation. But Soupy had one of these. He built a crazy NA motor for it, and then did the CRV all-wheel drive swap on it.
That's cool,
That's really cool. And then, of course, because my brain is my brain, I was like, I wonder how hard it would be to put that body, or more specifically, how hard it would be to take an S2000 drivetrain and put it in one of these and have a rear-wheel drive Integra.
That'd be awesome.
But
yeah, no, I've always been, and I mean, given it's because I also owned one, but even before then, I was partial to this particular body style of Integra.
Yes.
I love it, because it has the round headlights and stuff like that. And, like I said, but this was also a fun car for me and my buddies at the time, because it was like, we had nicer cars, and then we had like this, and we just thought it was fun. We could finally do all of the ricey things we always wanted to do to a car, and, this car definitely had it. Here it comes up. There's about to be a picture of me being.
Is that what you're working on in this picture?
Putting oil in it, and I don't know why I'm being grossed out by it, because I'm just dumping in oil, but this is a picture that exists. And this was, I think, when I first got it, and it was like, we took it, started looking through, like, what actually needs to be done with it, what does it have, what doesn't it have. It had, like, as you can see, this no name like intake that somebody definitely went to, like,
AutoZone
Pet Boys at the time and got the correct size tube and a air filter and like put it on. But it, like I said, it was just this fun car that we could live out our ricey dreams of. Like, even I put the for no reason, I just thought it was neat, like, especially at the time in the early 2000s. You remember, like, when you go to a car show and if your car had strobes in the headlights, it was super cool. So we did that. There was a strobe kit, and I put them just on the inner headlights, or whichever ones that weren't ever really on. And I had like one of those, because I always wanted a reason to get one from Pet Boys again. One of those switches that has the little guard on it, so it looks like a freaking missile launcher button. And there were two blank switch areas on the console in that car, and I put one of those in, and all that switch did was activate the little front strobes. So it's done, right? But so many people were like, "Oh man, it's got one of those switches. It must have NOS." And like, it was so funny. We're like, "Dude, no. If you flip that switch,
you just have one of those those compressed air cans for cleaning keyboards, and you have a button that just literally presses it."
Yeah, and like I said, I never said anything about anybody. I just always let people. I was like, "You never know." And it's like, but I didn't. But it was like, if you flip that switch, all this thing's gonna do is blink.
Yeah.
But like, we just had a hoot with this car. I took it autocrossing a couple of times, and it's it was my first time pushing a front wheel drive car in anger, and I didn't like it as much. There were some people that are like, "Oh, you're gonna love it," and I was like, "No, this style of driving
turn, you bitch,
is not fun." But no, it was just a good car. It had skunk 2 coilovers.
Okay.
And it was bumpy. It was a little too loud, but it was a good car, and I didn't mind if it was outside. So it was a fun time. Like I said, that's definitely one of the first cars I was like, man, I think every one of these for different reasons, and I think all of us car guys can relate to this. If I had an infinite amount of money, I would have never gotten rid of any car I've ever had. Like, there's never been a car that I've had where I'm like, boy, I can't wait to get rid of it. Like, even if it had a bunch of problems, I'm always like, well, sure, but I mean, I have a reason to have it. Like, I would have kept everything. And this is definitely one of the cars I'm like, man, it'd be kind of neat for no real reason to have that again.
Yeah, the problem is that they've gotten quite expensive. Like,
I know. And like I said, I got this. I could afford this working part time in high school.
yeah,
So
like
definitely not possible now.
exactly. I mean, no, I want. It's on my list. It's probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 on my list of money no object. Here are the 5 builds I'm going to do. A second gen Integra, I believe it's second gen, is on the list.
Yeah, because the first ones were like more square and had rectangular headlights. Yeah.
But and then we move on to the what should come as no surprise to anyone portion of this segment. Elliott in front of a C4
Hey.
Corvette with the what looks like appropriate footwear.
Yes, I don't think they were actually New Balances then. And the thing is, it wasn't even a joke. I wasn't even ironically dressing like that. That was, I believe, the first time I got to drive it to school, uh, on the first day that I was allowed to or whatever, like, and this was, I believe, 15 years old. So I wasn't, we live in Kansas, so you can drive to school and work at 15 by yourself, which was pretty sweet. I don't even know if you could do that anymore. But I remember, 14th birthday, I got my learner's permit as soon as I could. And 15th birthday, I was like, all right, I need to accumulate the hours, whatever's necessary to get your official restricted license. And here I was with a C4. And this is a 92. So for those wondering, I know it's not in chronological order, but this was my first ever actual car. Was this picture. And what you can see is the tail end of a Bichon dog that we had at the time. But it was a 92 C4. It actually has an interesting-ish story, looking for cars and stuff. And I found this. And it was kind of in like the budget. I forgot how much it was, but this thing was perfect. It was a 92, had 30,000 miles on it. That totally saw, it was like it was perfect. It even had, its window sticker still. It had, I mean, somebody had loved and taken care of this car. The downside was this particular one was an automatic. So,
I mean, not for nothing. I mean, automatic, like,
right.
but rear wheel drive manual first car, 15 years old,
Probably not good. Yeah.
not a
And this was already not good. If
yeah.
you,
Yeah, I mean,
so
if anything, it made doing burnouts easier. If the Malaise Era V8 had enough power to actually do that, but
it's not quite Malay. We're out of it now. It's a 92. It's got the LT1, 300 horsepower. That's more, But no, it was a good car. I definitely, you can imagine where this one went is I was, well, at that age, boy, and I was like, all of the roads around here are straight, and I knew like back of my hand, so I just kind of went fast everywhere I went. Big surprise to, I guess, anybody who's a car guy here. I got eventually a ticket and got grounded from the car for quite some time. But my thing with it, and it'll lead into one of the other ones, is that my one thing, and like I said, as perfect as this car was, and I mean, like I said, it was like having a time capsule of a C4. I mean, it had like stickers and stuff, where it shouldn't be, like everything, like it was perfect. But I was always like, man, I just really wish it was manual. And at the time, I still didn't really fully understand how difficult it is to get a hold of a manual C4. Tremendously, they're very rare. Just anyway, the other thing that was fascinating about this is that this car kind of stayed local. And what ended up happening is, my dad had one. I don't remember it. I was too young. But he says he had bought one of these back then too. And it, from this dealership and yada, yada. And I think he looked back and tracked the VIN number down. And this ended up actually being his old car. We didn't know it at the time. So so this
cool.
was his first Corvette as well. And then, it's this. And the thing is, I was also this kid. So I was like, man, I want to put exhaust on it. I want to do all this. And my dad is like, no, don't F up the car. Like he's just like, no, it's, and I looking back on it, I was like, I would never want to do it. I was like, it's a perfect C4. Don't touch it. So, but I still, I was always just, how it was at that age, and how it is at this age. It's just like, you're like,
I'm the same person. Legitimately, it's like, okay, I'll put it to you this way. The last, hold on. Yeah, the last, I guess, 4 cars, but really only 3. I was Googling mods before I actually had a car picked out.
Mm-hmm.
That's And
Yep, just want to see what it's like.
yeah, well, not even see what it's like. It's just like I want to know. Okay, what's the best way to make power in these things? Like, I mean, the amount of research I've done on C6 Z06s for power adders and things like that, and I've never actually owned one yet.
Right. You already have a build list in mind for a car you have never owned.
Exactly. And like Jeff at Blue Sky, we talk about this stuff all the time about how, you know, the what you call it, what cars we get, or what would be the good next car. It's like, let me just build the second Mustang before we get to the next car. But yes, let's continue having this conversation because I'm enjoying it. But like,
Right.
we're all kind of cut from that cloth. And if you, obviously, you and Greg, you have a little bit more responsibility with families and things like that. And not to say that I don't have responsibility or that I'm irresponsible, mostly.
You have a little bit more
Instead
levity
of
than
a
we do.
college fund, I have a. Can we really push 900 at the crank with this new Mustang fund?
Yeah, I love that though.
So
Envious of it, for sure. So
yeah, and I mean, one of these days we'll get you a nice. See, I would say ZR1 C4, but you still wouldn't touch it.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't touch.
So
I
we
see.
would have
If
to.
I got a rough. This is literally like this is how I even am, and my friend Jacob will make fun of me to this day. Even in Forza, there are certain cars that I will buy twice just to leave one stock, even though it's literally the push of a button to make it stock again. Like
That is next level.
honestly how I would be.
That is next
That's
level.
seriously how I would be in real life. I'd be like, all right, I have a 94 ZR1 that's perfect and absolutely whatever, but then I'd have like a 93 with some miles on it, and that I wouldn't mind putting an exhaust on, that I wouldn't mind doing like a DRM stroker kit on, like whatever. But it's like, but I couldn't, if I just had the one, I wouldn't mess with it. But if I had enough money for two, I would mess with one of them. And I know that that's like such a weird OCD car guy thing to do, but I have such a respect for like OEM perfectness that if, like I said, I ever found one that was like that, I'd be like, well, I can't mess this up, especially because they're already an odd car in the first place. And I don't even know if I want to start tinkering with the only overhead cam V8 until last year this ever made.
Yeah.
And we've already got a link that is like, I don't know if I want to mess with that at all. But and especially early 90s computers and no way to tune them.
Is the ECU separate from the body harness on those? Like,
yeah, kind of. It's a physical like unit, and in fact, the only reason that I'm very familiar with where it is you have to loosen a nut and lift it up and out of the way to get the battery out on C4s.
Okay.
But it is, I mean, it's a few big plugs and it's out, and they make these like really old school looking, like a stick of RAM for tuner chips that you can plug into them in some form or fashion. It's fascinating, but like I said, I don't think they got OBD2 until 95. And by then,
Okay.
I mean, the C4 is almost done.
Yeah,
So,
I see. I thought the C4 was out the door when I thought, and this was my, I guess you want to call it Corvette ignorance, but I thought the C5s herald OBD2 for the Corvette.
well, that's what I'm saying. I think the C4 got OBD1, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I'm saying
Oh
maybe.
man, if you could tune a car with just a flash, how much easier that would be. But
I
no,
know.
so what you're saying is if we're ever going to get Elliott a C4 project, it can't have an engine. Interior, we're 50-50 on. And it has a suspension. Maybe not the best.
Right. No, this will come full circle when we get to my other when we go further on the list, I guess.
Fair enough.
But that was the thing with this car. It was very, very perfect. I ended up getting grounded from it, and then it ended up being my dad's again. So,
I think that was his
I have a
plan all
great
along.
picture.
It's like, well, it'll be for him until he screws up, and then it'll be
Like
mine.
inevitably screws it up, and then it'll be mine. It's like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I might have to do that for my. Well, I guess I'm not gonna have a son, but you know what I mean. I have to do that for my kids one day.
Yeah.
It's like, here's a Ferrari. Don't mess this up. But when you do, it's mine.
Be like, but Dad, I want this.
Yeah.
You will have your Ferrari and like it. In any rate, that aside, our next car is another C4 Corvette.
Yep. So this one,
Is black.
and this is I forgot to tell you this. So this one does become the other car. So this is what happened. So we'll get to the other one of the out of order cars here. I got grounded from that original blue aqua metallic one for so long that I had to drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and we'll get to that later. And that was just my car from then. It was just like, well, what is this? It was such a bizarre thing that was going on at the time. I was like, so wait, I'm in trouble and I can't drive, but it's very inconvenient for me to not drive for everyone. So I have this other car, and but I'm like, and they were like, yeah, you can't go fast, so it's like whatever. I'll get into that story anyway later on, but this happened by chance. So remember that whole complaint with the Blue Aqua Metallic C4 is, oh, it's not a manual and I can't mess with it, blah, 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 blah. Well, along comes this C4 in town, just with a for sale sign in the window in what I could only describe as like an unsavory or industrial area of town that I don't remember why we were over there in the first place. It was like picking up metal or something, it was like some one of those kind of things. We go and look at it. I peek in the window. Holy smokes, it's a manual. Also a 92. We go inquire with the guy. Still never forget his name. He was like the shop owner of whatever this is. This guy's name was Reno. Like, I don't know why he was named after like shittier Vegas, but there he was.
His older brother
and,
was Vegas, the one that.
Yes, yes. But so anyway, my dad and him go out for a drive, whatever, and it's making noise. And this guy was like, he was under the impression that the engine was about to go, and my dad knows better, drove it, and then he just was like, the engine's fine, the exhaust baffles have fallen out. I'm gonna make him, this like he made him an offer that was crazy at the time. Still don't remember what it was, but either way, now I have a non-perfect C4 that's manual, and this thing has, you can kind of see it in that picture, paint rough.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Interior.
you can tell kind of where the light hits it, right?
Yeah, like this thing was, I mean,
Right
especially
here.
going from a delivery example, like
Yeah.
museum fresh C4 to this is a total beater. And like I said, it was this thing, like we were looking at exhaust, and I was like, oh my god, this is perfect because it's manual, it's not perfect, but I was like, can I can do stuff to this. And one of the first things was like, my dad's like, well, the exhaust is all effed up, and I'm like, well, Borla makes a solution for that. Like it
Yeah.
was instantly like, yeah, so whatever. But so that then was born the Corvette that I could mess with, and I was even more happy about this one. I mean, like, so this one also had the clear, which mine did, the first one did too. It was such a beater, the clear acrylic target top, because of the sun has what happens to them if they just sit out there is that it spiders out, and so like the whole thing, if you look up, looks like it's shattered. It's not, but it's just the way acrylic is after heat and everything happens to it. So this thing is, like I said, it has all of the C4 not good stuff happening for
Quirks.
it, but was a manual. And so here I am. Now I am happy, and I have my still a C4, but one I can mess with, and feels 10 times faster because it's a manual. Yeah, like I said, this thing was fun, and like I said, I didn't even think about it at the time, but those tires were like, I think practically the original tires, and this was still the early 2000s, so those things were rock hard 90s tires. And I remember I was like, man, I thought the car was so powerful, and that's why it was like easy to break loose and was easy to slide around everywhere. Uh, in hindsight, it's because I was driving on, essentially the kind of wheels that our Power Wheels had. Like,
Yeah.
just completely solid pieces of rubber. But that was this C4, and this is this is when I'm at least getting older. I have my full driver's license now. This is the one where we'd go over to the Catholic school after school and say hi to the girls and all that stuff. And,
Yeah, where you're sitting there,
funny,
where you're sitting there doing this with those chicken wings.
right. Oh yeah, it's like I said, and like it's so funny. And I've talked to people about this in the past. There's so many people that are like, man, you had these cars in high school. You must have been just killing it with chicks. Like, they could not have cared less. Like, yes. I cannot express that to you enough. Like, it was like, in my mind, I'm like, this is gonna, oh man, it couldn't have, like, I cannot stress how much it didn't matter. Like, it seriously, I could have had a Saturn and it would have been the same effect. But it almost doesn't matter. The point is, at the time, it felt really cool. But that was this C4, which, like I said, will show on. It's not a different car. It's what this car eventually turned into after I started to fully go through it. All right, well, have a good night, Ralph. Thanks for watching and listening to little Elliott stories, I guess. Look at me, I'm just a weird goober there. I think I even have braces in that picture.
We all have our awkward youth. So is this what you're talking about? What it became?
Mm-hmm. Same car.
Yeah.
So I should have had the the transition period in there, but
I just like the look. I just noticed this. The guy in the background.
oh yeah,
Just
I know.
who's just
I wish I could Photoshop them out of this.
it's like, the fuck is this kid doing?
There's a lot going on in this photo that I'm also realizing now. Like, first of all, me still total goober.
And your favorite,
posing
what
like
looks like
that.
favorite Miller High Life shirt.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like total goober, leaning against the car, this hot shit, wearing a shirt, and I've never had a Miller High Life in my life at that point. So like, what am I doing? So there's a lot to unpack there. Also, at the time, those were the equivalent of my New Balances. Those Adidas were my shit. I would just keep getting those. It was like I finally found my pair of sneakers.
I think I actually had a pair of those, but they had an unfortunate run-in with a river. And then... But, no, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. You were ahead of the curve. A fast Corvette in yellow.
Yeah.
Who saw that?
Because I remember, like, when I got the chance to repaint it, it was like, I was going to go... I always wanted to put Grand Sport stripes on it. I know that, whatever. But I was like, I was either going to go white with red Grand Sport stripes and still these wheels. Red with the same thing, or yellow. And the thing is, my dad was pushing red, blah, 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 you're not going to want a yellow car, whatever. And I don't know why. I just kept being like, man, I do really want a yellow car. Like, I don't, like, it was the thing. And I decided to go with Millennium Yellow, which was like the 2000, like a C6 Z06 yellow at the time, rather than the 90s yellow.
So what year is this picture, different. By the way?
That picture was probably 2007.
Okay, wow. Okay. Huh.
So, yeah, and then that's my dad's 54 next to it, and that was like a car show we went to.
Nice.
Downtown as father and son. It's like that was like a big deal for me, like finally be able to go to a car show with my dad, where I can bring a car too.
Yeah, no, I totally.
You have a very small window of time that's possible. But yeah, that was the car, and so this is also still tail end, but of high school. So I thought now, boy, if I thought the car was cool before, now that it's actually like presentable, and everything else, I'm like, I mean, what can be cooler than this? You can imagine girls still did not care, and guys thought it was pretty neat, but because also this is the Corvette thing. People didn't know it, even at the time. It was an older Corvette, but people don't really ever get that. And I mean, even to this day, I mean, you can drive a C5 Z06, and people come up to you and they'll be like, "Wow, must be nice." And you're like, "It's not that expensive." Like, I know it's nice, but you're like, there's a fundamental misunderstanding. People just kind of think a Corvette past a certain age, you're like, it must be brand new. And they're like, well, it's not. Like, but whatever. It doesn't matter. People still treat it like that, and it's an interesting thing. But that being said, this is kind of how, plus or minus a few things, what my ideal C4 looks like. And after this picture, I got a painted Targa roof that I like the look of better because it doesn't break up the lines of the car. So currently, and since then, it's had a yellow Targa on it as well. But again,
so you didn't like the black roof?
I didn't really like the black roof. No, I mean, so I like it from inside the car. It's really cool because, like I said, it's like this. It looks like you're still in an open top car because there's no, like, the entire thing is one big piece of acrylic glass, and so it looks neat. But like, no, I like the look of the painted roof more, especially from the sides because it makes it look like an enclosed car. From the sides with the clear panel, it looks like the thing stops and then there's like something on top, and then it just interrupts it for some reason in my mind.
I get it.
But either way,
the B pillar.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
Right. And some people, if you paint the B pillar black, it might not be as distracting. But I'm not a fan of that look either, personally.
Mm.
Because some people do that on C6, Z06s, and I'm not. But teach their own. Everybody. I'm not going to knock on it. It's just not my personal thing.
Right. I mean, that's
But yeah,
why.
absolutely love that car.
That's why it's customization, because
Right. And this is the car that now, it's even though it's the same car, that now from here on out, and you can imagine practically even cars before then, this is now the now constant in my life, where I kind of made the joke, which is probably not that big of a joke, that I'd sell my house before I sell that particular car. I mean, like, me and that car, we're in it. So this has now been the constant, and then any car you see after this, just know that this is still there. It's just I'm not driving it every single day anymore.
oh, so you still have this car to
I
this
still
day?
currently have this car. Yeah.
What,
Now,
when
how often do I drive it, considering how special and precious it is to me? Not at all, which is part of the problem. I'm just like, I hoard it in myself. I'm like, that's like when we say, oh, I wish I didn't get rid of anything. This is one of those where I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to get rid of that one, so I might as well just apparently not drive it. Now, it needs a few things in its modern state because it sat for too long, so it does need some things. But I've made
LS3?
it's been in a couple of YouTube videos. What's that?
said LS3?
Well, yes, that would be great. I always told myself twin turbo LS7 one day, but that's obviously extreme.
I mean, it is, but it's. I mean,
I'm not against because this is, again, it's still not my purest C4. Like, this one's okay to put stuff on, and like I said, it is modified.
really? So if it's okay? No, I'm kidding. I am resisting
No,
with
'cause this
all my
car, like,
force to make the
yeah.
put a coyote in it joke, which
I know,
I wouldn't even begin. Now, if someone did it, would I think it would be cool? Yes. Would it be my first engine choice for this car? No. I mean, personally, I just think some pissed off big block with a fat cam would be the way to go. Or actually,
Heck yeah.
an LS7 with a cam. I mean, LS7 with a cam, heads, the right exhaust, springs, retainers, trunnions. I mean, in the car, like, what do those things weigh even? They can't be a lot.
They're not that heavy. I mean, they're not light, but they're not very far. They might be 3,100 pounds, maybe not even.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not that heavy.
600 horsepower in that thing, double the factory horsepower without boot. Because, I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum. It's like, man, it'd be cool to have 1,000 horsepower car.
Yeah, but it's.
I mean, granted,
Yeah,
I mean, when the biggest hill in your area is the crowning of the road, I guess it's not too bad.
No, I mean, we have a lot of room to exercise stuff like that around here. Like, and for that, I'm very thankful. But that being said, it still is one of those things. Once you drive a car with that much power, like, you can't even roll into it until 60 miles an hour. And like, there's all these scenarios like it starts to blow off the tires at anything before that, and even then, it's something that, as a young man, I never would have understood. But having owned really powerful cars and driven really powerful cars, you don't really get it until you kind of live with it. And then you're like I said, even the Hellcat, by the time I really started stretching its legs, it was like so far much faster than you should be going in that area, for the same amount of fun that you can have with 450 horsepower in a different car. And it still feels crazy fast and whatever, but like, I could do it reasonably between here and work versus like needing a huge chunk of road and whatever else. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like I said, as a kid, you're like, no, more power, more power, more power, more power. And it's like, yeah, there is a limit where there's diminishing returns on how fun a lot of power can be on the road, which, again, obviously 16-year-old me would tell me how wrong I am until he's blue in the face. But 16-year-old me hadn't driven stuff like I've driven now. So
yeah, and also
16-year-old. Oh, I was also not afraid to die at 16. I was like, everything's gonna be fine, and
Yeah, you're basically made out of like rubber bands and magic. All right, there's the. Sorry, I just realized. Right, that one. All right,
Andrew. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Corvettes at Carlisle because I mean, I see it's just obviously such a gathering. But I also don't know. Like, I mean, I get to see a lot of cool stuff, but man, I don't know if I could deal with just a sea of a lot of the same kind of car. Like even and trust me, I'm the biggest Corvette guy that and I would be very excited about a lot of it. But I'm like, something about even like a really special car, like you see a '58 Corvette, you get really excited. For some reason, if there were 50 of them all together, it's not as exciting. I don't know how to describe it. You're like, oh, like I don't know which one to like look at now. I don't know. It dilutes it in a way. It's an odd thing, and maybe that's just me. But,
I mean,
you know,
yeah. I mean, well, let me put it to you this way. I'm right there with you with like variety and stuff. It's like, the Mustang. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I like talking to guys, talking Mustangs, talking about their builds, talking about this. But like, then like, what was it? The other day, a guy comes up to me and he had a 3-valve, and I'm like, and he's talking to me about it because he listened to me just talk about the Coyote, and he's like talking about 3-valve like I know what the hell that is, like know that engine or know the mod engine platform in general. I don't.
yeah.
Like, could you say the Coyote's an evolution of the mod? Yes, but pre-Coyote,
Was he trying to sell you on the merits of the 3-valve?
well, he was sitting here and he was talking about it, and like there was a very small YouTuber that I was shocked he actually knew and that I knew called like Ears POV. Who had a built 3-valve with a Pro Charger, I think, on it. And like, sure. And but like the thing is I think it wasn't that he was trying to sell me the merits on it. I think he was actually asking me on like what route should he go, and I'm sitting here trying to be polite and not say
Swap it.
like get a 2-valve or something, or like get like
Yeah, you are going to run out of things to do on that quick car very quickly.
Like the expense of it all is just not gonna get but like it's that's one of the things where like when I'm out in public talking to people, like there's another dude who's like trying to get into motorsport, and I'm like, just find a car you don't give a shit about and take it autocrossing. You're gonna learn more there than you will doing anything else. And
you'll also know if you have the chops for it on that. So
right, because you don't want to have 400 horsepower and not understand how to control a slide, or what losing the front end feels like versus just losing the back end, or when you're in a 4-wheel drift versus a
an oversteer understeer situation.
Right. Yeah. So like there's stuff to learn. But speaking of new Edge Mustangs, you had a spicy one.
I did. I had a Roush guy.
Side pipes are awesome.
I know the side pipes were really that's where they were at on this thing. And this is still my only Mustang. So this I figured when I sent this one that you were going to be like, now not too excited. This was not the supercharged one, but it is a real Roush. It's a stage 2 instead of a stage 3. But it was okay. I didn't really care. I thought it was really cool. I think for my only Mustang, I'm totally fine with it being this one.
I mean, side pipes.
It's like, yes, side pipes. I mean, fuck. Yeah, so awesome. I don't know what to say about it. It was great. It was without doing anything to it. It was a special car. Like you could take it to car shows. You could do whatever. There's me doing Burnout the first time I brought it back to town. What's fascinating?
My God, it is just now dawning. You say Kansas. Look at that horizon.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Continue.
It's that's it. That's everywhere you look. Is that? No, I don't know if you've ever driven a Roush of this body style, and I was blown away by it because so the spoiler is larger than a GT. Doesn't look like it, but it is. I don't know what it is about it, the geometry of how this works, but somehow they managed to put it in such a way that it almost directly eliminated rear visibility. And I was like, it didn't get it. The first time I had to get out of the car, be like, is it really that big? And I'm like, go back and I'm like, well, no. Adjust the mirror, and I'm like, you just can't see it. It's right in the way. It was somehow right in the way. And yeah, that's an odd remark for that car, but is somehow directly in the way. This is another picture. When you get zoomed out, it's a Mustang, and then the airplane, the Citation Mustang. Thought that was neat. But yeah, as my only Mustang. If everybody's wondering, again, still stick shift. I don't know if you could get an automatic Roush actually at this
I
time.
don't think so. I Here's the thing though. I know you like to take the bust my chops, which I'm totally on board with, about being a Mustang guy. I'm a particular Mustang guy.
Yeah.
These were always very cool because they were the Mustangs that kind of grew up and grew around. As far as the modern
Yes.
Mustang, like the Roush was sort of the holy grail. Like Roush even made a version of my Focus, which I think was turbocharged.
Yes, I've seen those. Yeah, those are
You
cool.
know, which was kind of cool and stuff like that. But like new edges are weird for me, and certain guys, Roush being one of them, they look awesome. Mostly because
Yes.
every car needs side pipes. Like when you sent me this picture, I think one of my first comments was you should
Those
put
side
side
pipes.
pipes on your Prius.
Yes.
It just makes everything go look. But like new edges are, there's just something. What's the word? There's something incredibly cool about them, and then nondescript about them. And I think for me, the reason that is because for every Roush or Terminator or what have you that you had, my girlfriend in college had a silver V6 convertible
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of it was. It was
that I
for
couldn't
a lot of us.
even.
It was the first mainstream. The V6 proliferated like yeah. There was always somebody who was the direct opposite of a car person that had a V6 New Age.
And you could. It didn't. It made so little torque that you couldn't even power brake it. I was
Oh
like,
no, yeah.
oh,
It
at the
was
very least, it might be an automatic, but I should be able to do a pretty easy one tire fire on this thing. No.
nope. It doesn't have it.
But
uh, this thing had its issues and everything else. And obviously, I bought it used and whatever else. But for what it was, I will say this is of the cars that I've had in my life might have gotten the most gas station uh, unwarranted chit chat that I've ever had. Um, and I think something's a Mustang, and then the fact that it's a Roush and like whatever else. Now, given as you know, as a car guy, when people approach you about your car, there's almost no follow up about it. It's they want the door open and then they tell you about their thing. Uh, but that has never happened as much as it has in this particular car.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know what it was about it. It was just like I said, it was just
I'm willing to
everybody
bet because it
kinda
had a
knew what it
Roush.
was.
Well, it had a slightly different badge. I'll make you a bet, and I made the joke about it, but I'll make you the bet that it was. Wait, that's a modernish car with side pipes. The only other thing I know
Right.
that has that is the Viper, so this must be special.
Yeah, and like I said, it is cool. Undeniably
Were those
very very cool.
Toyo or Kumo tires on that thing?
Yeah, not good. I don't remember. They were not.
I think I had a set of those as like shit kickers. I remember the tread
Yeah.
pattern, but
But again, this was also like my daily at the time, and I was still in back and forth to Missouri. So I've driven this thing in like the snow, like anything else. I mean, this thing was a trooper. Um, to my recollection, before I got it, it had been in some what I could only describe as some sort of front end accident that made it pull horrendously
oh boy,
uh, to one side or the other, and no amount of alignments or anything could fix it. But you just got used to it. It was what it was. It was it was cool. It's my only Mustang, and like I said, I'm not opposed to getting another one, but it's just like if I was gonna have one, at least I had a cool one.
no,
Um,
yeah. If you had told me you had a New Edge Mustang, it'd be like what is that meme? It's like you see my new Mustang, right? And you go, yeah, I had a black New Edge Mustang. It's like we are not the same.
yeah,
But the fact
yeah.
that it was a
I know.
Roush,
I got a lot of that, especially in whatever. I forgot it was like frat guys were like, "Tell your dad or put your dad's car away" or something like that. I was like, "Oh boy."
yeah, it's like your girlfriend let you take it for. The funny thing is that I dated a girl with a Mustang before I actually ever owned a Mustang.
Oh. Hmm. Well, probably good for her. You wouldn't just only talk about the Mustang on the date.
Oh, when I sit here and I tell you that she was way too good for me, it she will never ever watch one of these things because I'm pretty sure after we broke up, there's zero chance. But
I know I don't have a lot of threat of any of my ex-girlfriends watching this either, which is
but
an
I
interesting
mean,
thing.
she was the equivalent of like Dean's List in high school. She was Dean's List in college. She was like part of all these different club, not an athlete, like all these different things. Like basically, what ended up happening was is my one buddy wanted to start dating this one girl who was this really cute. Again, I don't want to say nerdy because nerdy's the wrong word, but like very smart, accomplished academically girl in our town. And the girl I ended up dating was her friend. And I just remember we're looking back at it after like things inevitably went south when they realized, why are we dating these meatheads again? Um, but it was just it was when I referenced that in my life I've only smoked marijuana 3 times. Once was to try it. Second time was with my buddy who was a professional musician, and I just assumed I didn't like it the first time because my other buddy had gotten crappy weed. And then the third time, after realizing, nah, this isn't for me, was to annoy my girlfriend at the time. This being that unfortunate girlfriend.
Oh,
I was fun to be around in college, man. When you want to talk about like your tip, I wasn't what you would necessarily consider frat boy, but like when you consider the collegiate athlete who's sort of that stereotypical villain in the movies, one would argue the Chad.
you were wearing a Leatherman jacket every day and slapping kids' books out of their hands.
I wasn't that far of a bully, but like, we rolled deep, and like in high school, I wasn't. I mean, I wore the Leatherman jacket as long as I possibly could, especially when I was one of the first sophomores to get a Leatherman jacket. So like, I was wearing that shit all the time to be like, yeah, I'm hot shit. It's still in my attic, by the way.
You're like, I've still got it, just in case.
I might have to bust it out next week or something, or next time you're on. But yeah, I mean, yeah. At any rate,
Yeah, if I get on a cast and you're just wearing a Leatherman jacket, I'm gonna be like, oh no.
yeah. Well, the funny thing is that it was like my dad told me to wait. He goes, no, you're gonna letter in other sports. Wait until you get your letter in football, in addition to baseball, so you can have it all on one jacket without having to send it off. And I was like, no, I got my letter in baseball. I'm gonna fucking wear it. And so it just has baseball. Like, I was getting that was like akin to being like almost getting that Leatherman jacket was like high school version of me's equivalent to getting the keys to the first Mustang when it was finished. Like that level of excitement.
Yeah.
Dumb jock that somehow carried a 3.2 GPA through his high school career. At any rate, I think where are we going next with this? Now for something completely different.
Yeah, wildly different, by the way.
Yes. Oh crap! There we go. Rotary power.
In no particular order, yeah. But this was my, I think, '05 RX-8. The thing that was interesting is, so this is back when you could still get them. Like they weren't out of production yet, I don't think. But this is an early carp, and I knew as a car enthusiast, I knew the inherent problems with them, and I was like, I can handle it because I know, like I know what their deal is. And if anybody's watching, one of their deal is just, first of all, they burn oil. It's a 2-stroke engine. It's part of the combustion process. RX-7 owners knew this because they were billed and sold as such. When they sold the RX-8, they kind of just told everybody it was a normal car and just drive it, which is why they all went to shit. They made an automatic version of these, and like I said, it's a cute car. They sold them to girls. They didn't tell them all of the stuff that you have to do. It's not a normal car, no matter how modern it is. And one of the things, that was a pain in the ass about it, was you cannot start it and not let it fully get up to temperature. It will not start again. It will flood. I mean, even if it gets a little warm, it's going to flood. And there's no real way to get it unflooded by yourself without like a shop. So there's these things where there's making sure there's oil in it. There's needing to redline it every once in a while, which I know is not that big of a problem for car guys. But sometimes if you're just commuting to, school or work or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, I guess I need to find a little stretch of road to rev this thing out to $9,000 for a second here. It's kind of an odd thing. And I know those were only like 2 things that I mentioned, but it was the constant threat of this thing not being able to start just based on driving it like a normal car, it became a stressful ownership experience. And by that, it was like there was a time, and like this was taken outside of my apartment complex at the time. It might have even been why I was took this picture. It might have been, I forgot why, especially because it was a parking lot. But my roommate at the time was like, "Hey, can you move your car real quick?" Because I don't know. And I almost fought with him because I was like, "No, I can't just move my car real quick because I'm gonna have to sit out there for 20 minutes and let it warm back up so that it'll start tomorrow." I mean, that's a dumb thing to have to do in a modern car. Uh, and I remember there was that little bit of frustration. Obviously, you had to just travel with oil. That's not that big of a deal. You just check it. Um, but the downsides were it really wasn't that fast. And then as a person who's commuting from Missouri to Kansas and back every once in a while, it's a 5 hour drive. Um, I would, have to stop to pee in Kansas City. But in this car and this car only, I would legitimately need gas in between Columbia, Missouri, and Wichita, Kansas, and in uh, no other car that I had couldn't just do that in a tank, no problem. It's not that far. These things got such atrociously bad gas mileage. I mean, I think it was 14 city and 15 highway. Um, and it was just part of the nature. It's a two-stroke engine. And I wish I'd sent this picture to Chad because it was the first time going back home. I was sixth gear on the highway going 80, maybe 85. I don't remember. But I was at 4,700 RPMs or something like that. So this thing is screaming. It felt like just going, and I'm like, I'm in, as high of a gear as I can go in here. And I know the thing revs to 9, but it just felt uncomfortable to be letting something sit at that high of an RPM for hours. It just the whole time I'm like, ugh, like like I said, it's part of you as a car guy and understanding how the engineering of a rotary works. I know it's okay, but then on the other just mechanical sympathy side of me, I'm hearing this thing and I'm like, I still don't like it and it still doesn't feel good, kind of a thing. And it just took, is a little bit of that and a little bit of just everything else that it just ultimately decided I was like, I don't really want this car anymore because I hate stressing out about it. Now, that being said, interestingly enough, because I was always stressed out about it, I actually ended up having no problems with it whatsoever. Like, not even a little bit. This was the least trashed RX-8 I've ever been around. I think at the time it only had 45,000 miles. I took care of it. Whoever had it before me seemed to have taken care of it. Um, it was a cool car. I still really like the way they look, and I get very excited if I see one on the road. Now it's been a long time because again, people didn't follow the instructions and they've all seized up or flooded and have been pushed away. I mean, they're just that's the way they were. But it was a neat little car, rear wheel drive, rotary. It had those cool little quarter doors. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Previously only seen on trucks, but if you open up either the front or passenger door, it actually had a second little like reach inside quarter door in the rear there, which made it somewhat possible for rear seat people to get in there. And the interior was really neat. It had those, cool seats and then like rear buckets as well, kind of like a 911 or like a GTO or anything like that. Like I said, neat car, stressful ownership experience, even though I didn't have a problem. If that sums it up for you.
Sound like you owned a rotary.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I kind of wish, like I get it. I'd love to, own a twin turbo RX-7. Like that's what that car needed. It needed boost. I mean, like I said, fun to wrap up, but it never made power. It never felt like it made power. It just made
No torque.
about a bunch of buzz. And yeah.
No, I mean, I there was a period in my life where I kind of dug on these a lot. And I dug rotaries, but that was a short period in my life. I was never like I'll tell you right now. Sean goes, imagine a turbo diesel rotary. The U.S. military made one of those, or it was in trials or something. I did a reel on it. I forget exactly the I forget exactly what it was for or what have you, but the no, I mean these things are always kind. I've always liked the styling of the RX cars. I've always thought that the best blend of what they were versus what they or what they could be versus or the ethos of it, right? Like a high revving engine, small displacement, fun rear wheel drive car was effectively a K swap. You know, Ks will spin to the moon. They'll make decent power NA. They'll make more torque than these will. Like I said, to those of you who are rotary fans, God bless you. Like Elliott just described, it's a labor of love. And but they're just not my cup of tea. They're just because of all of that, because of all of the extra little maintenance, the little carrying oil with you, the worrying about apex seals, the two-stroke nature, the incredibly appalling fuel mileage and stuff. Like, not that I give a horse's ass about fuel mileage. I mean, see my car history and you'll sort of
right. And neither do I. It just, you think this like 1.7 liter, whatever it is, you're like, well, naturally it can't be burning that much gas. And you're like, well, you'd be surprised.
Bet.
I'm frustrated with them because, like, even from an engineering standpoint, which is why they've been trying to sell them to people since the 60s, is it makes good sense. There are way less moving parts, and everything is moving in the same direction all the time. That's less stressful on everything rather than a piston, which has to drastically change direction
Momentum
every
changes.
time it goes. Right. That's what I'm saying. Like this, it makes such good on paper sense, and nobody has ever made one work. Like, I mean, yes, they make them function, but I'm saying they make them work like it's designed where you go, well, this will never wear out, and there's only like 4 parts to it. Like it should be pretty easy, and yet here we are.
Yeah, I mean,
they even made a rotary Corvette as a concept.
The Aerovet, a massive, what was it, 7-liter 4-rotor? That
I mean, like I said, the rotary engine was the future when somebody was like, this will work, and you know, it, like I said, it still should, but well, it just doesn't. You know, I guess.
Yeah,
it's like it's the communism of motors. You're like, well, this makes sense, and you're like, yeah, but try it out.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like on paper, this should work, and then the real world happens. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, there's a reason why piston-driven internal combustion. It's just simpler to make it work, even if you're having piston speeds go from insanely fast to stopped to going in the opposite direction just as fast. It's easier to seal them. It's easier, you know, to oil the componentry and stuff like that. It's, you know, 2 strokes fell out of favor for a reason. I mean,
we have about 130 years of figuring out how one of them works.
Right. I mean, we've gotten pretty dang good at it. No, and then sorry, I just posted the reel I did on the.
Oh, you did do it. See, I was like, that's a good real idea.
Yeah. It was originally developed by John Deere, scaled up by Rotary International was the name, or something to that effect was the name of the company, for military trials, and then it just sort of never went anywhere, like most rotaries.
True. It is fascinating how a diesel type. I'm sure you went into it, like, you know, even because the pressure required to make a diesel combustion happen is way different.
Right. I mean, I didn't go into the actual mechanicals because, again, that's one of those things. I have like 90 seconds to tell you what it is, who developed it, the story of it, why it's worthy of your 90 seconds, and then. But it was my whole thought when I first saw it was it was this little grainy low resolution picture of a John Deere rotary, and I was like, how hilarious would that be on like a zero turn, right? Like, like Elliott's out mowing the lawn again, and it's like,
Just makes a racket.
as he's
Yeah.
going through and everything. But look, the
No,
RX
I do get it.
platform, I honestly the most beautiful looking, in my opinion, JDM classic is the RX-7.
Yes. Very
They
timeless.
look so good. Growing up, so I rode my bike everywhere, and to get pretty much, it was almost exclusively like go out of my house and make a right. I'd ride by someone who had an RX-7, an FD, and I'd drive by his house or ride by his house, and I'd always slow down and look at it because it was so much unlike the only thing in my brain that could even come close to comparing it to was a Viper, right? Like that long hood that just, I'm not saying they're obviously very different cars.
No, I totally get that comparison, honestly.
But like it was just the way it was, and like Sean said, the RX-3 is a really cool car. Like I love that sort of boxy styling of that era with the 13B. They're really cool cars. The next car is, I don't even know because I've reordered these, so we're just gonna, in the interest of time,
can throw it up there.
put it in there. Phrasing was a 350Z convertible.
50Z.
We've mentioned it before, but here's an actual picture of it.
Well, this isn't mine, but this is identical to mine. The same wheels and everything. And mine had black interior, but regardless, the pictures that I did have of mine weren't as good looking as I was like, let's just get the point across on that one. No, this really was. I know everyone can be blah 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 blah. Like you have to remember at the time, they were not what they are now. Like the 350Zs, it was still a new car. This was still a new fancy, nice car, and heck, they were still making the E46 M3. Like we have to put that in perspective, folks. I did not go out seeking this car. I actually probably went out seeking a lamer car. I really wanted a stick shift Infiniti G35, but those are hard to find. And the guy were like, we don't have that. We do have a stick Z. And I was like, oh, cool. And it turned out to be a convertible, which is like, again, I know as car people, you're like, oh, maybe not. But then I drove it, and, like everything, I mean, I know I have a stronger stance on this about Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff, but before it got the bad rap in the early 2000s, like in its era, in like 2004, 5, 6, the VQ motor did sound very unique, especially under stock. There was nothing else that sounded like that. There were V6s and they sounded like shit. There were V8s and everybody knows what that sounded like. But the VQ made, like I said, a very interesting note. And again, I'm talking with stock exhaust and everything like that. What we hear now is cut off everything and everything sounds like a trumpet. I get, totally not what I'm talking
VQ can sound good. You just have to do it right. Yeah. Like pretty much any engine, right? Like I will sit here and freely admit the Coyote with the wrong exhaust sounds like hot ass. Like we went to,
but under the right one, they sound so cool. I think the Coyotes is probably honestly just flat out the coolest sounding V8. Like they sound so rowdy.
Yes, but it's like the VQ, very easy to get wrong. And when these things first came out, they were sort of, because you have to remember, we had gotten the Mark IV Supra, but it had become this ridiculously expensive thing. We never got anything hot from Nissan. We never got we never had a GTR. Like we had Silvias in 240 nomenclature.
And we had the 300ZX, even the twin turbo one, but it was in the early 90s and it was still pretty muffled and snuffed. Like it still wasn't
right.
Crazy.
But from what I'm saying, is more of the, I have my license. Holy cow. It's a rear-wheel drive V6 making over 300 horsepower. Because remember, at the time, that a Mustang with a V8 was only making 300,
280,
like maybe 300.
Yeah, it was like 280 at the crank.
And you had this, and then I've always had a soft spot for this platform, is because I to this day, have never driven a car that was easier to drive sideways than this thing's luxury cousin, the G35.
Yes.
Like,
and honestly, still with this, if you ever get the opportunity again, uh, unbelievable car to get and hold sideways successfully. I mean, you instantly you were like, I see why all the guys are making these drift cars.
yes. And
No,
here's
but
the fun
like,
part. It's the same chassis now.
yeah, right.
It's both a testament to how good that chassis was and how Nissan currently operates. But at any rate, what I have about this car is how old were you when you bought this vehicle? Not the one we're looking at, but yours that was silver with a black.
Again 17. So too young to have something this nice. Which again
your
is
early
why
car history is way more impressive than most. I have to admit.
Well, I was a very my dad loved me, and but the thing is, I think that's also why, and we've talked about it before. It's not just it is that, but it's that age. It's this, and the fact that it was everything. It was like the perfect storm of my mind still being Play-Doh, of this being like this is as cool and as good as something can be. Like somehow just like got matrixed into my brain. Like it was just like literally, it was like this is all I've ever wanted motoring to be. This open top experience, the sound, the feel, the shifter. They just like I said, it was new, so there was nothing loose about it. Like the steering was really heavy but still nice. Like there was so much to it that I look back. I've had nicer cars and I've driven miles and beyond things that are better than this, but this just still has a special spot for me. And like I said, it sucks that everybody turned these into these rattle traps that they are now. Not so much the Roadsters, but just if you say 350Z to somebody now, it holds an entirely different connotation than it did when the 350Z was still being manufactured. Like I said, they're just, it was such a cool and unique and fun car. And I did, to my father's dismay, still modify mine a little bit, which I know doesn't make sense for a convertible, but I did. I had HKS exhaust, which was the only one that maintained the VQ sound because it had these like resonators that went on top of like over by the mufflers. It was a very interesting setup. And I remember like that was my favorite thing is there would be coupe 350Z guys that would want to race. And then they'd be like, well, I can beat him because it's a convertible. And I would smoke them because mine was, modded. I did everything that I could do bolt-on wise to it. And I don't know. It was just such a good car. And like I said, very, very special to me for all the different reasons. That is definitely one of those like, I love it. And the thing is, some people don't like the styling of the convertible because part of the iconic thing of the 350Z was that kind of, not teardrop, but the sloped roof. I actually kind of liked the convertible because like even with the top up, they didn't try to keep the sloped roof. They went with like this whole like short back like a hot rod. I thought it looked like kind of like a 32 Ford kind of like look when you had the top up. I didn't even.
There's a comparison that has never been made about the 350Z.
That's true. I don't think it'll ever get made again. It was a pretty wild one, but
you and Chris Forsberg were fans of the drop top 350.
Yes. Yeah. That's anybody who likes to put these things sideways.
These were.
No, it was just a fantastic car.
They're very cool. I mean, if you can get one that's either in the unlikelihood unmolested or tastefully or lightly, they are an experience. They do drive phenomenally. They are incredibly fun cars, and like I said, or like we've both said, sorry. If you're not a moron, you can make them sound good. I've heard VQs, admittedly with the 4.1 stroker kit, but they sound as close to a Porsche GT3 RS as anything I have ever heard.
Dude,
which is arguably really one of the best sounding V6s or six cylinders in general of all time. No, they're fun, great cars. Unfortunately, they got affordable. When they get affordable, the type of person who, may have seen a silver convertible 350Z in Wichita, Kansas with an exhaust, dust some coupes and stuff like that.
And they're like, I know what these can do, and
I know let me just, and then it's the budget is not there, and no, there. Look again. These are one of those cars that if you're looking for an affordable, fun car and you're willing to do some legwork, they're basically can't miss. Because the VQ
and they're
was
still
around
out there, even the
for
coupes. Yeah,
was around for forever. Even the new one has a variant of the VQ in it. Granted, it's 3 liter and turbocharged, but the point is that when an engine's around, as long as this VQ has LS, they're pretty damn good.
yeah.
And that's
No, the VQ was never. Yeah, it was never these things' problem.
no.
And really, they don't really have an Achilles heel compared to a lot of the performance cars, even the Japanese performance cars of this era. You know, like if you look at like what my buddies had, Evos, STIs, and then I had this. Like I said, those guys were going through motors, and I'm just like, just chilling, But they're still, like you said. I actually, I think I sort of brought it up in one of our car presentations between you and Greg. Yes, you do have to do some legwork, but there are not completely molested examples of these still out there. Now, again, it was a very odd thing to find a convertible that's stick, whatever. But if you can find one, there's a less chance of it being molested than the equivalent coupe, just due to the nature of who bought them and what for. A lot of the convertible owners were just wanted them to cruise, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I think we've beaten the horse dead. I loved the car. Like I said, very special place in my heart.
Good car. Next is just you. High horsepower luxury model.
Yeah.
Is a Prius.
Reliable. Yes. So to come back full circle again, we're out of order here, but it doesn't matter. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
This is a way less cool version of why I originally got my Integra. I finally got a car, so I had, again, a constant in my life, still that C4 Corvette. And then I had my Hellcat. But then those are the only 2 cars I had. And it was like, all right, it's going to hail tomorrow. Like, I don't want to deal with either of these. Like that kind of, it just got to the point where I'm like, well, I don't really want that to be the car that I have to take over here or whatever. So it became, let's find a car that I don't care about as much. And honestly, this was, I think, when I was at least dabbling into the YouTube thing, and I thought literally the reason I got it was the dichotomy, or just the juxtaposition of how hilarious it is to have a Hellcat and a Prius at the same time, because they are so, the physical representations of opposite of each other. One was such a problem and such a statement in the early 2000s, the Prius, that people just, it doesn't matter if you know who it is or what they're doing, or even if you see it moving, you hate it. As a car guy, you go, ugh, when you see one. And, it's funny to be like that, and then knowing that I still had, a Hellcat. Also, this was made as a decision when I had already had my first daughter. So it was like, I do need a car that, I can reasonably put a car seat in and do whatever, because that was not the Hellcat.
There were other options.
There were, and, I know that. So like I said, just purely think about it that I did this ironically, and I was like, this will be pretty funny and an interesting experience as a car guy, especially because I talked so much crap on them for so many years. And what better way to learn about something like that than to live with one? And what ended up happening was I learned, obviously, because, just like you talked about cars you've never even owned, imagine owning one of these, and I started looking into how they worked, why they were this way, stuff like this. And what I opened up for myself unintentionally was a world of how fascinated I was with what they were able to do with this car. And I felt really bad about kind of how much shit I used to talk on them, and just lumping them in with what we do as car people. Because honestly, the people who buy these are insufferable. I get that. They did not buy them for the right reasons. And they do drive too slowly, and they do all the wrong things. And it's a safe assumption, if you see one on the road, they don't care about driving, and they're more of a danger to you than anybody else on the road. All of that being said, from a technological standpoint, I became absolutely, I was like, I literally became like an evangelist to my friends. I was like, do you guys know like how this kind of works and like what they were able to do with this at this price point? Like it's fascinating. We are literally just now like Toyota was losing money on these things because like it was so far ahead of what they were able to do, like technology wise and everything else to make a hybrid that even the fact that the internal combustion engine can turn on and off again as many times as it can was before the age of auto stop start. Um, there's so many things almost like I don't even want to go into it. But the point is, I started to get really into it. I kind of talked to some of my friends about it, and next thing you know, two or three of the other car guys around town semi-ironically got them as well. And then as they had them for a few months, they were like, dude, you're not kidding. This thing's actually not that bad. And I'm like, I know. Like, they get out of their own way if you drive them like a normal car. The problem is everybody that's ever had them has never done that. They drive and be like, well, better take her easy. You're like, no, just drive it like a normal car. It will go the speed limit and then some. I can get on the highway at a reasonable pace, unlike for some reason everybody else that owns one of these. And I'm like, it's the same car. It goes just as fast. Uh, like there's a lot to it. I originally got it ironically, but it has grown to be the backbone of the stable, if you will. Just because it's the one thing where you're like, you know what? If all else hits the fan, the Prius still works. And it's kind of got that rotary thing to it. One of my favorite things about it. A number of belt-driven accessories, one. It's amazing that you know how amazingly more reliable that makes a car having fewer belt-driven accessories. Well, turns out very reliably. You don't have anything but the water pump being driven on the belt, so like it's very low load. It takes, like you can leave it on all the time if you want, because it'll just sit there and just be on. The brakes don't ever wear out because there's a level of like when you're applying the brake, it just is regenning, and its early version of it's like when you let off, it's kind of freewheel regenning. But like these things will go like 100 and something thousand miles without needing pads because you're never really using them. I mean, there's a lot of things on these that should be wear items that just aren't. And the only reason that these things ever go bad is because they get higher mileage, they start to use a little bit of oil, and I think their Achilles heel is that they have, and this is an exaggeration, but what feels like a 2-quart like oil pan on them. Like their capacity is seriously like it's under 5 quarts. I know that. And if you're down 1 quart, this thing is slapping pistons. And the general person who owns a Toyota of any kind, Corolla, Camry, what have you, they don't necessarily check on those things until the car tells you, and by then it's too late. But if you keep oil in a Prius, I really do think it's one of the last modern-ish cars that will last you quite some time. And specifically this second generation. After this, in 2010, when they revamped them, obviously Toyota corporate and everybody was like, hey, we kind of got to start making money on these things. And they did change a few things, and they've been less reliable there on forward, which I don't know if anybody's ever paid attention to Priuses or ever, but you'll see more of these second gens around than you'll see almost any of the other ones, because this was like the perfect point at which Toyota was like spared no expense with engineering, and you know what I'm saying. It was like almost like that perfect era in like 1990s Mercedes, where it was like they were building them as best as they could without worrying about making money off of them anymore. And it's just it's a very interesting, unassuming car that I can leave out in the hail, and it's old faithful, and like also in my line of work makes things very fun when you drive this and then you get to drive like a Ferrari 599. It makes that Ferrari 599 feel a lot faster than it would have if you showed up in something else. Yeah, the contrast is helpful, I think. There we go. There's my phone Prius speech.
Oh, sorry, nodding off there for a second. Look, do I get the need for a reliable daily? Yes. Do I get the need for all of the things that a Prius can provide from a general ownership standpoint? Also, yes. Do I mega load these things with the passion and fire of 1,000 suns? Yes. Um, Look,
I
to each
understand.
their own. It's a daily. Like, look, if for someone like you, if the end result is it saves you X amount of dollars at the end of the year, just when you said there were other car enthusiasts in your town that got one of these, I just
I know
immediately
you're right.
pictured you guys being like that weird Vespa bike gang. Um, but look,
Well, no, because we all have the other cars still. That's the thing. We didn't trade it in and be
I
like,
know,
yeah,
but
let's
I'm just
both
like
keep it the
seeing you guys
Priuses.
like rolling through town 4 to 6 Priuses deep. But like,
Oh man,
um,
that'd be pretty
look,
sweet.
I get all that. Like, it there are elements of that sort of technology that is interesting. Um, I got in. I have driven this generation of Prius more than I'm willing
More
to
than you'd like to have, probably.
right because when these things were starting to get popular, um, I'm guessing it coincided with the national. I don't. Our America as a nation's eyesight was getting worse, but um, Enterprise wanted to get onto that bandwagon, so we had a lot of these in the fleet, um, which sounds like a great idea. Given you don't need to replace the pads all that often. Well, little
But people are still rough on the old rental cars.
people are rough on rental cars, but more to the point, real quick thing how Enterprise, I don't know if they still operate this way, but this is how they used to operate. Number one, maintenance was a big thing. Like, you used to get pretty big dings on your record and promotability and stuff if your branch or you were in a position of power, like a manager, and you weren't doing maintenance. However, the smarter of the managers would see a car and they'd immediately, when they got a car in our, because like it's fluid, car could go to the airport, come back to us, go to Rahway, go to Rockaway, come back to us, like go back to the, like, it's all fluid. So these cars are moving, but for that period of time it's in your fleet, it's generating you income at the individual branch level. But some of these branch managers were actually pretty good at pulling up cars as they entered their fleet and their maintenance records. And wouldn't you know, the cars they loved, like, so we had, where I worked was not retail heavy, it was vehicle replacement heavy. So weekends for us sucked. So we had an agreement with the branch out east that did a lot of retail. So we'd send them 20 cars on Friday morning. They'd send
Mm.
us, on 20 is an exaggeration, but and on Sunday night or Monday morning they'd send us them back and back and forth. Branch manager changes, and his whole thing was is that his maintenance costs for his fleet were suspiciously low. He wasn't not doing maintenance. It was just, by the way, that Prius you just got is 150 miles away from needing an oil change. So the like, I was always in one like, oh, fine, just do the maintenance or whatever. But there were these managers who would play just kick it down the road. They'd kick it to the
Mm.
next branch. They go, oh, it needs this, up, 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 up. So they got the absolute shit kicked out of them. But I do remember sitting in one of these things like, oh, I've never really driven a hybrid. Let me see what this is all about. Who in their right mind looked at this shifter and thought it was a good idea?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
from
and
there
the thing
was,
is, oh, especially back then.
and from there spawned the genesis of, okay, I am like a snap judgment. Now, are the new ones, do they look good? Yes. Do I still
The
have
newest ones actually are pretty cool, honestly.
that voice in the back of my head from when I made that initial snap? Like, you ever meet someone initially you don't like them, and then like it turns out that for them to be a pretty decent guy, probably for your first take at meeting me, but for a long time it's like that first impression is hard to shake. So it's like, I know this
Yeah.
is a good dude, but what the fuck was going on with that hairstyle or whatever, like whatever that
Right.
irrational thing was. And that's me
Yeah.
and
No, I get it.
Priuses. And I'm actually getting a notification here. We've elapsed our allotted time for the year on Priuses, so we're moving on to the next car.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, I was like, we could get into this, and like I said, yeah, I got it as whatever. So chronologically, we're jumping way back here. Um, this is a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited, so it does have the V8. I believe it's like a 4.2 liter or something like that, Chrysler V8. This is exactly like mine. Still, it had those wheels and everything.
Was that the
So
single
this,
overhead cam V8?
I think it is.
4.7 liters,
Um,
maybe.
yeah, that makes more sense because the big boy back in the '90s, the Jeep, the high output one was the 5.7. So
Yeah.
yes, 4.7 is probably more correct. Yeah, I'm not as well versed in my early 2000s
Well,
Chryslers.
friends of mine have that motor in their vehicle, in a couple of their vehicles. Fun fact: Mercedes engine.
Yes, yeah. Well, this was the Daimler era.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no. So I had this. This was the. I was in trouble with my first C4,
And so you
and
got
so
a
my parents
shiny
wanted me.
red Grand Cherokee.
Well, no. So it wasn't new. This was my dad's old. So he had one, and then
Okay.
like he just never traded it in and got something else, and we just kind of kept this around as like a spare car in the family. So it all of a sudden became mine, and it was like, well, you'll never. Obviously, Elliot will not get in trouble with this. Right. So what happened was then I think my other friend, I don't know, he also had uh, his mom's old Lexus like LX 470, and then I forgot one other friend had something else, and so we were still car boys, and we grew up riding dirt bikes and all this other stuff together. So what we couldn't find, obviously, have fun on the road with these. We were like, well, what can these do off road? We started just experimenting with off roading. So like you can imagine the frustration my dad had being like, what? And I'm like, well, it can't. We went over here and we did this, and we got it muddy. And this is before YouTube, but we made videos that we just called like luxury off-roading, where we were just taking these things off of shit that we had no business doing.
Man, your channel
And
would be
given
a
it's
lot
Kansas,
bigger back now if that was how it
oh, it
originated.
would have been great. Yeah,
You'd have been. You were
especially
the
because
OG whistling diesel.
yeah, no, literally, especially because unintentionally we goaded his cousin, who had like, so one of the things, again, Kansas. So we had like a few like huge berms and different things, and I took this off of a jump that was over by the airport. It was in the grass that we found, and I did it enough times. We did it on video, but the last time I did it, I got a bunch of air, and the adhesive from the rear view mirror came undone, and so this thing just slapped down. But it was on one of those cords, because it has the
Yeah.
auto dimming thing. And I didn't really do it, but I don't know what it was. Like my dad walked by it, and he was like, "Why is the rear view mirror off the Jeep?" And I'm like, "Well, it just kind of came
I
off."
mean,
And
it's a
he's like,
Chrysler. What do you expect?
"Yeah," and he just was like, he knows, and I mean,
Yeah.
he knows me. He was like, "There's no damn way that just came off. Like, what did you do?"
Yeah.
So anyway, you can imagine we still had our fun with this. But one of the things, again, so frustrating. I do have the video somewhere, so it's not lost to history, but it doesn't matter. One of the things we would do is slide around in dirt roads because you could do that.
I mean, I was Colin
Uh,
McRae in my Focus, so
right. So yeah, so you get it. And then imagine with like all-wheel drive, we were like, oh man, you can like power through these things. And anyway, so we kind of goaded my friend's cousin into this, and it wasn't even his car. It was his mom's Lexus RX, like 350. And we were on this dirt road, and it had a property, and this is the only way this will make sense. So like it had one of those things where it's still a main road, dirt road, but it had a gate that opened up like this, and the gate was open on the inside. And we were sliding. He was not, shouldn't have been doing it, and he was just overzealous aside. Anyway, I was videoing. He was sliding, and he ended up plowing this thing into the open gate like this, like so. Yeah, the gate was like this, and he came straight on
oh my
and
God.
hit it and just effed up his mom's car. And like this was just like an after school thing. We're like, oh boy, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, we didn't do that. You did that.
You're on your own.
Like, yeah. And he's like, dude, my mom was pissed. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure she was. She came like, because what do you explain? Like, there was no reason for you to be driving your car, and then you just put the car back, and it's all bashed up in the front.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is a fun story about this Jeep because other than that, because so this went on to be my sister's car, and then she ran into the garage and did all this other dumb stuff that people do and sideswiped this and did that. Like this thing has been through it. But then it went on. My uncle was like, my dad sold it to my uncle for like $1. Like he's like, well, I don't want to get rid of it because it's like, fine, but it's not really worth anything anymore. My uncle still has it to this day, and he will still drive it to work every once in a while. And I'm still just like, I cannot believe that car is still like kicking.
Yeah,
and like, I mean,
the strut mounts
I knocked
being in one
I just, I'm
piece.
saying, I knocked the front end so horribly out of alignment from jumping it that like, it's never been the same. Like, and like, I've told him I've ridden in it with him. He's like, oh, it's doing this, and I'm like, Uncle Glenn, I really put this thing through it. Like I can't believe we're in it. Like that's the kind of punishment that it's been through.
Oh
So
man.
it's fun for my least enthusiast car enthusiast car that I've had.
No, no,
That not
no.
only
The
was
one prior to this was your least enthusiast
oh
car
true,
enthusiast car.
fair.
These things have actually a
But
pretty good following. The Grand Cherokees or what have you.
they
They're
do, but
always
they're worthless. It's amazing. Like I think it's like still fair. He couldn't get rid. I think because my uncle was trying to sell it. I think he was trying to sell it, and this was at the time, pre-COVID. I think he was trying to sell it for like $3,000, and couldn't. I mean, like they're somehow worthless, and this was like a 40 something $1,000 car in 2001. Like it's just it's an odd thing, but no, I do have a soft spot in my heart for those because well they're tough as nails.
yeah. Now Elliott tested, Uncle approved.
Elliott tested and approved, but before YouTube.
Got an Alvis rating. All right, so we've gone through a pretty. I mean, your car history is fairly interesting for like a topic that just bounced into my head. I was like, "Oh, he's talking
Yeah.
about this. He said had that. He's like okay." Like I was sitting here, it's like okay, you had this cool car, but then you also drove a Prius. I can make that work from an entertainment standpoint. And then I don't know if you would consider this, but arguably the crown. You probably consider your C4 the crown jewel of your collection. Who am I kidding?
No, I do know what's coming up next, and I was hoping this one would surprise and impress you.
I know we've talked about it, but
Not this one, but yes,
the hell,
it's still also the crown jewel.
yes. There are a couple that I unfortunately missed, but we're approaching 2.5
It doesn't
hours.
matter. We're long in the tooth here. I know.
So like, let's get to the highlight of Elliott's collection, and that is
Yes.
a vehicle that requires more horsepower to spin its supercharger than your Prius makes.
That my Prius makes. Yes, and that's what, like I said again, that's why it was a funny duo to have. No, yeah, this is my 2016 Dodge Challenger Hellcat manual. Very important to note.
Yes.
Because yeah, there was not a whole lot of those because it doesn't make a lot of sense. This is a very two-handed car, and yeah, when you have to take your hand off the wheel every once in a while.
It's amazing what happens when you stuff 707 horsepower into a chassis that was developed in the late 90s.
In the 90s, yeah, you're like, it's a 1998 E-Class.
Yeah.
With 700 horsepower.
Although they were doing, I mean, this is actually a reel I'm working on, is the old E55s that had the super, like, the Hellcat before the Hellcat.
Dude, those were, I mean, still, just love them. No, I love this car. I mean, there's not a whole lot that I can say about it that hasn't been said, but my experience with the car, because especially 'cause I bought it new, these aren't the cars. So it was, especially at the time. Now you could find one used, whatever, test drive one. You could not even test drive them at the time. There does become a threshold of car where they go, hey, do you want it or not? And they don't let you even take it out for a whirl, because every Joe off the street would say, hey, I'm thinking about one of these, and no thanks, just to get a drive. I get it. But I had to own one before you could form an opinion of it, which is a crazy, risk. What if you hate it? I kind of knew I wouldn't hate it just because, even though I'm not a Dodge guy, or I guess Mopar guy, whatever. There was something when these came out. It just literally was. I was like, that's the coolest ever. And I knew at the time, I was like, this has got to be the last time that car manufacturers are going to do this. And Dodge did the right thing. We've talked about it before, but Dodge did the right thing in marketing them too. Every commercial was talking about how kick-ass America is, and just constant rolling smoke out of these.
Yes.
And there was no apologies. It was literally, there was nothing about them that they were like, hey, no, we tried to make it the best we could. Their marketing was, look at this. How kick-ass is this?
This is absurd.
Like,
Buy one.
and that's what they just leaned into it. And I was like, I don't care what brand made this car. I love that idea so much that a modern multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar company made something kick ass, and their entire marketing thing was, doesn't this kick ass? Like, I love it. You know, like I
Yeah.
guess as a man of excess and everything else, I'm like, that's it. That's the coolest thing. I
No, I
I
mean,
want it. You know,
I mean, this thing's. I mean, effectively, and they played into it so well. But this was the Hemi Cuda, the Hemi Challenger of our time.
yes, it is. And like I said, this, and I know because I sold it. Trust me, I'm going to be watching a show when I'm an old man with my kids, and there's going to be some segment about this car, and about how nuts it was and everything else, and yada yada. And I'm going to have to be the crotchety old guy saying, you know, I had one of those, and I think everybody in the room will be like, yeah, right, or whatever. Sure, you did, Grandpa. You know, kind of a thing. Uh, but it's real, you know. Like there are people back, you know, our dad's age that had the equivalent of this car, and it was like, do you know how insane it was? Um, and like I said, I just can't believe that I got first of all got to live it before we all go electric and all that other stuff. This was the ultimate, you know, salute of everything. And like I said, that's they're even leaning into it now with the whole last call thing. I mean, they know,
Oh,
you know,
they
and it's
very know.
and I mean, I love that. I mean, even at the time, Chrysler's fleet, like they were like the only big automaker that didn't even have a hybrid, and then they were making this. Like there was like the cafe rules state that it needed to stop after this certain time, and they're like, sure, sure, sure. What if we make one that has more? And you're like, dude, that's like every time it happened, I'm like, yes, this is awesome.
Or hear me
Like,
out. What if we put one in a Jeep
yeah, it's
or
like
a
I said, it was just
Durango?
like I was like, this keeps getting better. Like they should have been releasing a an electric Dart, but they were like, let's keep tuning up that 6.2 and keep putting it in different things.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it was such a cool time.
you know.
You know, like I said, and this was the first of it. The Chargers and the Challengers were the first, and the ultimate, you know, marketing and everything like that. And of course, you know, then came the TRX and the Durango and the Jeep and everything. And they're all really, really kick ass. And each one of those, I still would stand by the same way as being like, get one while you can, because I mean,
Yeah.
nobody will ever believe you had a 700 horsepower Jeep. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
You know,
Or more to the
like
point, like 700 horsepower Jeep. It's like an 11-second Jeep. I'm sorry, what?
yeah,
You know, like that's.
somebody decided to make the Jeep fast. It's literally the not. It's the exact opposite of
It's like,
what
you
it's
know where
meant
Jeep
for.
started, right? Like, no, I mean, look, I'll be perfectly honest. If when the Challengers and stuff came out, and like the hotter versions of
Right.
them, when they came out, I would have been in a Challenger, not a Mustang. I love the look of the Challengers. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I like the narrow bodies better. I don't.
Yes.
The wide bodies look too aftermarket-y for me. Like I like
Right, because the wide body was literally tacked on fenders. I mean, it wasn't.
right.
Yeah.
Personally, I like wide bodies that like look like they have a motorsport function, like that. Like you have the wide body that you almost not like C4 ZR1 level of wide body where it's like, wait a minute, that subtle, but
Right,
where
where it
it's
looks like it was
full.
designed and not riveted on.
Right, where it was designed to serve like even if it doesn't serve a motorsport function. You
Right.
also got it in the correct color, which is kudos to you.
Thank
No,
you.
like we were talking about like, you know, oh, I used to have one of those, and like it's like, Grandpa, the turtle combustion is not even cool, or oh yeah, what'd you sell yours for? As this one's like rolling past $300,000, like
Right.
what have you. It's like, great
I
job,
know.
Dad. It's like, haha, that's why you're going to community college.
Right.
But nothing against that. Proud JUCO bandit right here. But like the thing that about this car is because of the marketing and how brilliant that was, is everybody seems to sort of like gloss over the fact that this was a response to the, what was it, the 5.9 or 5.8 liter GT 500 Mustang that was making 670 horsepower, and Dodge is like, that's 100 horsepower than anything we make, and like had an internal
Yeah.
freak out, and they were, and their end result was this. Like, that is literally stories of my dad talking to me about like, oh yeah, like so and so put a big block in their car and then everybody did. It's like, Yes, like I
Yeah.
get it. We don't do big blocks anymore, but like boosting the V8s that we do have, because I mean, Ford was doing it, then Chevy came along and was supercharging their V8s and putting them in everything. It was just this was
No,
the
it's such a
horsepower
cool
wars of the
time.
'60s in our
I know.
lifetime while we
And we
were
got to
adult
live
enough
through it.
to enjoy
Yeah.
it.
And like I said, the marketing and stuff like that. The thing that sucks for our dad's time and stuff when that was happening, yeah, they knew about it, but it was like kind of almost like word of mouth. And like there were a lot of these versions of these cars, without the internet, which it wasn't there. There were versions of these cars these guys never heard of. Like if they weren't in the magazines, and there wasn't one in your hometown, there was a hot version of one of those cars that like it wasn't even
You wouldn't even know
in your
about
mind.
it. Yeah, but like
Yeah, so yeah,
because
with these we got to know about it, and
I remember one of the most fun press cars I ever had the opportunity to drive was a Challenger TA. That was supposed to be the Challenger that handled. I mean, as well as 4,400 pounds can handle.
right.
But it was to this day, and I don't. It only had the 5.7. It didn't even have the bigger engine, the 392. And even with that, even with the 350-ish horsepower it made, even with a red line that started with a 5, that
Oh, you dual overhead cam guys.
your LSs will go well beyond 6. So like,
Yeah, but it's
you
it's
can get
ringing
up to
out.
7 on a properly built upper end, or top end on an LS. But at any rate, like all this stuff of like just like old lazy, it made me feel like I was back in the 60s Trans Am, where the cars didn't necessarily handle on a rail, and it handled well enough to where I was never in fear that it was going to lose control, but it was
Right.
such a fun car. And the I think it was a T56, the Tremix that came in it, was such a good shifting, like good
Yeah.
positive. Like I will freely admit, Mopar did the manual shifter feel, and the manual transmission in general, because T56 defecates all over the MT82 in every conceivable metric unless the MT82 is built with the proper relocation kit. But it just, there was something like, and I said in the review, I was like, this makes me feel like I'm in the 60s, going light to light. Like no other car had that charm, had that magic. Sure, Ford had sort of invented the sort of retro revolution with the Mustang, but even those Mustangs
Yes.
didn't feel, they felt modern for the time, but they didn't feel, they weren't the time machine. They didn't pull off that double act that these did, and the world's a
Right.
better place for it.
And again, thank you for saying the retro part because that's what I was going to say. Mustang invented it, and then Camaro followed suit 5 years later. And then these guys came out with the Challenger. Because, I mean, they brought the Charger back, but that was not a retro revolution. That was
The fact that the
we brought
Charger
the name
came back,
to a sedan.
yeah, but
Yeah.
what always
But
got me
this-
was the
but they-
Charger was a cop car. It's like somewhere Bo Duke is weeping.
But this, though, even like in '08, when they came out again, it really was like you could look at that and that rear quarter end.
They nailed
especially
the
with that like
proportions.
exposed gas cap filter, everything. You're like, that is a CUDA. Like that's crazy. Like they did, and the thing is, they stuck with it. The because this is the refresh. Like they modernized it. Because one of the things I never, I guess, paid attention to. I mean, obviously knew what they were, knew about them, had been around them and stuff. Never really liked the pre-refresh Charger or Challenger as much because no matter how nice it was, even the SRT models, the interior was atrocious. It was rental car spec no matter what you got. And in 2014,
I figured as a
or
Corvette guy,
2015
you'd be okay with that.
I know. Well, yeah, but I'm okay with it to a degree with the Corvette, I guess, just because of the amount that I'll apologize and excuse for that car. But no, there really was. I've never seen an interior transformation without changing a platform the way that Dodge did this in like 2015 or whatever when they came out with the refresh. I mean, you'd be like, wait, this is the same car? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah,
That's nuts. And
it was a night and day transformation.
changed everything. And it, again, it made a car like the Hellcat possible. You could charge Hellcat money because, you got in it, it didn't feel like a turd. You're like, even if because the other ones, they weren't slouches, but like you just always were surrounded by this. Ugh.
Well, it was a thing.
And it was too late.
Chrysler as a whole for that time frame suffered from truly apocalyptically. I would rather be driving anything else. Like I remember, like looking at those radios, like the interiors, just the quality of materials and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember getting into all of them. Again, during my rental car days.
Oh yeah, but you actually did have the actual rental experience.
Of
Jeez, cat. Sorry.
this was right around this was before like Kia and Hyundai turned it around. Like this was right
which
on
is
the
also
cusp.
a big thing.
And the Chrysler interiors were only slightly nicer, and they were only slightly nicer for a given period of time before they started to feel exactly the same because those interiors just.
Right.
I mean, granted, they were rental cars; they weren't taken care of. But guess what? They were cleaned more than any other car, right? Like the one thing about Enterprise is we had to clean our cars. So literally, it would go out, come back, get cleaned. Go out 2 days, come back, get cleaned. Like even with all of that, the paint on the buttons, I remember, would so easily get worn and start chipping and flaking off and everything. And it's just like, and I remember thinking to myself back in that time frame of like, how are these Korean shit boxes? They're not great, but at least they like when you buy it and like 2 years down the road of being rented, they look the same.
Well, you guys are flipping cars at like 10,000 miles. Like, like they didn't.
Well,
let
the good
cars
we are. I could go on a whole filibuster on this.
Sure, yeah, I know. I'm just saying the point is like if they were wearing out that fast, that's even worse. Like
yeah. Well, I mean, none of our cars ever saw 30,000 miles, so like that's 2 years of ownership for. Little over 2 years of ownership for the average consumer,
sure,
and that they just wear out so quick. And then the new ones started coming in right at my tail end of my tenure, and it's like,
and you're like, woo!
It's like, huh? I guess they remembered that they used to be a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Like their infotainment system,
they brought that back.
The infotainment systems took such a leap forward, like. To such
they
a
went
degree.
from essentially not having one to having one of the best in the industry. It was
right.
wild.
And then fast forward to 2019, and I'm in a Dodge Ram, or I guess just a Ram.
With the long screen?
The big vertical screen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is better than a lot of luxury cars I've been in. It's crazy to me how Chrysler did that 180. Because, yeah, like... I mean, like I said, I didn't really care about Chrysler until the Charger came out, and I loved those. They would look so good. Like whoever did the design, because it was like I'm sure you've seen the Jason Camisa video, where he talks about recreating the GT40, and how it was almost impossible because they were trying to do a new GT40 instead of doing the GT40 again, just scaling it correctly.
Yeah,
and. More so than the Mustang, definitely more so than the Camaro.
Right.
This was just bang on.
It's like I said, and then the thing is, like they stuck with it, and especially like the Challenger and stuff. Like by this point, by the time they refreshed the Challenger, particularly, which is the one we stuck with, by then even the Mustang had way strayed from the the original. Like 2005 is like that benchmark of holy crap, that looks like a modern fastback Mustang. And they definitely given looks, it's a Mustang, but it had strayed from there. And same thing, Camaro, my God, like even almost like after like 2012, they're like, all right, we're just gonna kind of do whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, trends are trends for a reason, and trends are not lasting. Which is why
there was a time when the Challenger was outselling, like they were moving these units.
Well,
because you could get one that looked cool no matter what.
Right. Well, that was the trick that Mopar did. That I mean,
Mustang and Camaro didn't, because there was a very
think about it for a second. I think it was
line.
2021 or it might have been 22. I forget what year, but the Challenger was the best-selling quote-unquote pony car of the big three,
Right.
and it was the oldest.
Yeah.
You know,
it's an
and
old
that's a
platform,
testament
you know.
to the design of the car. I mean, say what you will, but it is one for the history books in the fact that these things were around for what, 15 years, and the general basic shape didn't
Unchanged.
change.
Yeah.
And they were still
like literally
selling.
they didn't even change that big on the thing. They literally changed the front and rear bumper and the hood.
You know, so like huge ups.
Nope.
I mean, part of me still wishes you had this, because then, you know,
So do I.
it would.
And so does me in the future when these are going for a lot of money. But
Yeah. But
I'm also thankful that I did get to have one in its heyday.
yes. So yeah, I mean, that better to have had that experience. Better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, so to speak.
Yes.
All right.
And this card gave the possibility for the rest of my channel's BS to be possible. So
right. So
it was not a total loss.
exactly. So right before we end, what cars do you own right now
Currently.
as of this moment?
Okay, so Prius, obviously first and foremost.
Yay.
It's becoming a staple. I don't know, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally. But I have the Prius, I have the C4, the yellow one, as aforementioned, of the not going anywhere. I have the 5 Series BMW, the 1998 528i manual. And then and I have the Volvo, the V70R. Volvo. And
I was
then
like,
have
are you
the
leaving something out, or is our fan base about to
No.
be disappointed?
No. And then I have the Maserati. I got rid of the Mercedes 300 TD not too terribly long ago. And then I had that Z4, but that I got head-on collisioned in that a few years ago.
Oof.
But yeah, so I still have like a decent random smattering of cool cars. And the reason we didn't list those in this cast is because those are easily found on my YouTube channel, because I've documented my life since then.
Exactly. And we've, in some way or speaking, we've given a lot of those cars sort of their moment.
For sure.
But
Now that being said, if you go all the way back to the beginning of my YouTube channel, there is a video from like early YouTube, before YouTube did anything, and I was just putting videos. There's a video of me taking my C4 to the drag strip with my dad, from like 2007 or 2008.
oh, nice.
It's not a good video because it was shot on like Sony DV camera and edited by me in Sony Vegas in 2008. But if you care to go back,
that
to
was
the
long
first
before
video
I-
that's on my YouTube channel. That does exist.
Oh,
And so that car has been documented a little bit, I guess, and then it's been in a couple of videos since then. But yeah, no, my car upbringing, I was very fortunate. I had a lot of interesting things. We did actually leave a couple out, but it doesn't matter. We don't have time. But I've had a smattering of things, a little bit of here, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
A little bit.
And you know what? It's what makes me who I am, and have the car experiences and opinions that I have, just like all of us.
Yes.
I haven't had just exclusively cool cars. I've had I've had a Prius for longer than a lot of these cars.
Yeah, there you go. No, it's definitely cool. And like, again, from like an idea that just popped into my head, like I actually had no idea it was as extensive as it ended up being, which is really, really cool. But yeah,
Thank you for letting me share it with everybody. And like I said,
I mean,
it's fun.
Your C4 Corvette videos have 54 and 38,000 views alike.
Well, and how old are they? 20 years old, like
17 and 16 years ago.
See, it only took that long to get to that many views.
I mean, as opposed to the 6-year-old Hellcat autocrossing, which you'd think would do better. But no.
Trust me, that was the whole story of that. I was like, this is gonna kill it on YouTube.
You never know.
It does not.
Well, as we've all learned, it's title and thumbnails apparently. But
yeah, well, I wasn't like YouTubing at the time. I literally did just make that video to record it. But yeah, anyway.
And then of course your second Prius video outpaces both of your C4 videos combined.
I know. Isn't that gross?
That Oh, and your fourth Prius one had 100.
I know, isn't it? Like, trust me, I literally had to explain to people. I was like, "Did you know that people don't give a rat's ass about my Hellcat? But if I make a video on my Prius, it actually does pretty well." They're like, "That's not true," and I'm like, "It is true, and I don't know what's happening."
It's like I wanted to make YouTube for cool car content. All they want to watch is God.
I literally
Prius.
did. I made a video of the Prius because I was like, I'm not ready to make a video on the Hellcat yet. I want it to be really, really good, and like I'm not ready. And little did you know, it was like, but it doesn't matter. They don't care. And yeah.
Challenge your Hellcat review. Is it better than a Toyota Prius? Oh my gosh.
It's pretty funny, honestly. I like that video.
Yeah, but all right, man. Well,
Anyway,
thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you again for all you do helping out with the show and appearing and all this other sort of stuff. Guys, go watch 17-year-old Elliott Alvis content.
please do. It's pretty good.
So, I mean, it looks pretty epic.
My Integra is in one of those. If it's the C4 Corvette burnout, obviously, you know, like that's literally just that age. That's when you could title videos like that. But literally, that's all that happens. So you can imagine. But then I do a little funny like water burnout in my Integra. And so that's in there.
There you go. Go check it out, guys. But again, thanks, Elliott.